Hello and welcome to the Game Informer Show. I am your host, Ben Hanson. I'm joined as always by permanent co-host Tim Turi.
Super permanent. Hello.
And then we are honored to have Sir Andrew Reiner here.
Hey, long-time listener. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And then making his rebooted podcast debut, the great Andy McNamara.
Hello, all.
A little bit sick, but he came in just for this.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it work.
It's gonna work really well.
Yeah.
So we have a really fun podcast episode coming up for you today. We have some lingering E3 impressions. We're going to talk about the whole VR wars that's going down. You guys got to see almost everything at E3, I think.
We tried.
You certainly tried. Yeah, and then we're also going to talk about Batman Arkham Knight, Lego Jurassic World, and then in the final segment, we have a long interview with Dave Grossman, who is not a household name, but he was a programmer for LucasArts back during the Monkey Island era. He was the co-lead for Day of the Tentacle. And then he has the really unique perspective of going to Telltale in 2005 and basically being the old school champion of adventure game design and kind of watching the evolution of Telltale until it's kind of where it is now.
Yeah, I wasn't super familiar with his work until we talked with him, and it was a super interesting conversation.
Yeah, and now he's working on audio games, which is another weird, fascinating avenue. So stay tuned for that. But to start things out, Reiner.
Yes.
You've been playing a hell of a lot of Batman Arkham Knight.
Actually, I played it 3 weeks ago, and I couldn't talk about it with anyone.
It's very frustrating.
Because I was the only person that played it. So we got Brian Ward to sneak in a session of playing it before E3. So he and I would sneak off whenever we could at E3 into these darkened corners and discuss the story and all the craziness in it. I know a lot of people have started playing it now.
Yeah. And
it is, I would say, Rocksteady's best story. Maybe their weakest game out of all of them because of the Batmobile is a constant thorn in the side of Batman in this game. It is not fun for, I would say, 3/4 of the game.
Really? 3/4?
Yeah. And okay, here's the thing. Like Batman, his hand-to-hand combat, the second you started playing it in Arkham Asylum was instantly fun.
Right.
It was engaging. You got it. You got the depth that was there. And it got harder as it went. The Batmobile, its tank combat sequences are not fun right out of the gate. They're really slow and cumbersome, just like Battlefield.
Well, to be fair, when I hear Batmobile, I think driving that doesn't sound like fun. So I think maybe Rocksteady just stuck with that.
I think driving it is fine.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm
totally
in the movies
kidding.
with the flame on the back of it.
It seems like it'd be the best thing in the world, but somehow they've mishandled
And that's the thing. I think driving is fun. I'm like 4 hours into Arkham Knight now. Like driving it through the streets of Gotham, that's great. Even like dodging missiles and stuff when you're in driving mode, that's great. But every time you have to switch to the dumb battle mode and take out these slow-moving tanks, it's the biggest pain in the ass. And it's more of a pain in the ass when you have to navigate tight spaces like the big Ace Chemical plant in the beginning, where it's just like basically the car becomes your co-op buddy that you have to inch forward like you're, it's strapped to your leg or something. It becomes really annoying. It just feels like a Lego game.
Yeah. I thought that stuff was kind of cool, the puzzle stuff, and it gets more dynamic as you go. Like you'll have the Batmobile like hanging off a wire like in a cavern, using its cannon for different things for navigation for Batman, which I thought was pretty cool and clever.
Sure.
Because you can switch remotely between Batman and the car. Like Batman doesn't have to physically be inside of it.
Okay.
So it is like a second kind of entity that you're using to solve puzzles. But that core combat thing that you're talking about with the tanks, that doesn't get fun until like that 3/4 mark,
and
where they really amp up the difficulty.
Okay.
And they start throwing different challenges at you. It's not just dodge the green laser. You got rockets coming in. You got to use your EMP because there's like 50 tanks on screen at once.
Right.
So once it gets to that point, it's actually kind of fun and tough. But it does take most of the adventure to get there.
Oh, what a pain in the ass.
One of my favorite things I've heard you talking about, and this is like, it was everyone's first question when you hear about like the machine gun with the Batmobiles, is kind of like, well, Batman doesn't kill people, so what's going on here? Well, one, anyone that's touched by the Batmobile immediately goes to sleep because of electricity. And two, it's just like all actual machine gun rounds, but as soon as it goes over a person, it's like rubber bullet, rubber bullet, rubber bullet.
Yeah, it's just like rubber bullet.
It's just perfect.
Yeah.
It's like, I'd almost prefer him doing like some sort of like cartoon outline of someone like in a... Yeah.
I mean, they had that tech back in like World War II. So like gunners, when they'd whip around so they wouldn't shoot out their own tail, they could actually hiccup and not fire theirs.
That's
they could
true.
go full 360.
Is that the technical term?
That's right. A bullet hiccup.
All right.
But it seems like the Batmobile should be like a fun bonus on top of the great playing Arkham games, not this crammed down your throat experience.
And it's not. And we're being too negative on this here.
Right.
I mean, the story is fantastic, but they do things in the world. You have a bunch. This is the biggest Gotham you've been in. It's not a walled off prison anymore. It is full thriving Gotham. And you have sections where you can't drive the Batmobile in there because the enemy forces are too strong.
Right.
So you do have to be like, use your wings or your cape to glide in and kind of play it like Arkham City more than anything. And then eventually you clear it out, you bring the Batmobile back in. And it's one of those moments where you're like, do I really have to bring it back in?
Right. It's like getting away from Ashley a little bit in Resident Evil 4. Like, thank God, just let me breathe on my own for a second.
I just put the Batmobile in a dumpster. That's what I want to know and walk away from it.
But there's not much I can reveal of the story without really spoiling it, because outside of the first hour of this game, that's all that Rocksteady has really communicated is that first slice, that first sliver of the game where you get the buildup of Scarecrow going against Batman. There's other things afoot here and other characters getting involved and things going on with Batman that are very cool, unexpected.
You pitched it as a Metal Gear Solid 2 style twist, and I got to it last night. I think I was expecting a little bit too much. It's amazing they were able to keep this under wraps. That's the amazing part.
That's what I'm referencing is I can't believe no one leaked this or this hasn't leaked yet. Like just like Metal Gear Solid 2, when you get to that character switch, you're like, whoa, what? I didn't hear anything about this. It was just always Snake on that tanker, and this is a completely different game now.
Right.
But
does it go in an interesting direction after that twist with the twist?
Oh, yeah. You got to a twist of a twist. So there's more twists coming.
Okay.
So it is a very deep and engaging narrative to the point where I was getting all this interesting side content thrown at me, like side missions with different characters that I was like, oh, I like this guy. I want to see what they do with him. This guy hasn't been in the series before, but he's a known name in the comics,
right?
From the most recent New 52 stuff. But it's like, I don't want to engage in that because I find this core story so compelling. I just want to keep going down that path and blaze that critical path and see what happens. Who's Arkham Knight? That's a big mystery. That's right out of the gate. It's like, that's interesting. Like, I want to know what's going on there. So yeah, the story, play it for the story, play it for your classic Arkham kind of Rocksteady stylized Batman moments.
Sure.
But, do the best you can with that Batmobile because it is a nuisance. It's well designed. It controls well, but that combat is a really huge slog for the first 3/4 of the game.
They really Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. You said something that was really daunting to me, which was that you said to see the real ending, you need to get 100%, which is like
or you can go to YouTube.
Well, but I mean, I don't like going to YouTube to see it.
Right. Yeah, it is.
That's daunting to me when I sit down and I'm going to play Batman, which hopefully I'll start tonight. Was like, I don't know, like a game that I know I won't get 100% on. Which I don't think I will, just because the Riddler challenges get, I'm assuming, very difficult, and some other challenges get really difficult.
Yeah, they're crazy, and there's a lot of them, and they're very, they put as much care into the side content this time as they did the core campaign. So whoever is involved in creating these Riddler contraptions and all that stuff really went for it to fool players.
There's like 270 something or
264.
There's
I think.
A lot. And you imagine and you're telling me that it seems like the story is solid this time around.
Oh yeah, it's
cool
a lot
twist.
of fun.
Can you imagine if the real ending of Red Dead was hidden behind 100% completion rate and no one saw that?
Well, that's the idea. Is it a cliffhanger ending until you get to 100%, or what level?
Kind of is, yeah. So no spoilers here. I'm going to do this outline this as well as I can without spoiling anything, but you finish the game, you're thrown back in the world, there's no credits, you get another mission thing comes up, and you're like, okay, that's going to take some time because it means I got to complete a number of these side activities. It's like percentage based, right?
Okay.
You do that, you activate this next mission, you do that next mission, you get a new ending, you get credits, and then this still frame image it's just seriously middle fingers in your face of get 100% to see the real ending. And you're like, holy crap, that means I got to do all that Riddler stuff.
Yeah.
Because they have a really nice mission menu where it shows the percentage of kind of how you're doing in each task. And the Riddler one, it's like you do his story beats, those racetracks and all that stuff.
Right.
And that's filling up a significant amount. But then there's this big, huge gap at the end of it. 40%, which is those Riddler trophies or challenges, and it's just like
the stuff I will never do.
Exactly,
basically, is what that is.
That's a bummer because honestly, I've liked the Arkham games, but I've never been compelled to do the side activities in any of them. Unlike even a game like Infamous Second Son, which I was kind of I think I liked it less overall than Arkham City, but I did all the side activities. So it's do you recommend people try to do as many as the side activities as they can when they're going along?
Yep.
Or okay.
Yeah, as you play the game, if you do want to see it all without going to YouTube, be complete in all the story-based missions. When they kind of close you off in an environment and you can't really go anywhere, you're just kind of on this path like Arkham Asylum. there's trophies in there, or you get the Riddler messages. You enter a door and you got to like take a snapshot with detective vision of what they're referencing. Mm-hmm. That's all throughout there. So you really got to kind of pay attention to the environment as you go through it. I don't know if that's going to be really compelling for a lot of people, looking for vents and all that stuff the whole way through.
Yeah.
When you do have this kind of riveting story that's kind of trying to pull you along as quickly as possible. But again, there's YouTube. Someone's going to do it for you. I'll say this: the second ending was like, I don't know, maybe 40 seconds, and it gave some more closure.
40 seconds?
Yeah.
40 hours for 40 seconds?
Oh, yeah. Of like maybe a minute and a half. I don't know, but it is a short sequence, right?
Sure.
But it does add more, give more closure than was there before, and then the third one is definitely even more than that.
I have another interesting thing that I think I'm not doing any spoiler ground, but it was another interesting thing I thought you said to me when we were kind of walking around the office and talked about Batman was that you felt that bosses weren't as well represented as they had been in like the original game and things like that, which were like things that people talked about and loved about.
People loved the what was the big one?
Mr. Freeze and Arkham City is so good. Yeah.
So I think Rocksteady looked at this game and went, "We're sick and tired of these repetitive tactics against bosses where you do the same thing 3 times to like lower their shield or hit them in the sweet spot or whatever."
Sure.
So they thought this time, like, well, we'll just kind of sew some bosses into normal gameplay, like the Predator mode, where you're being stealthy Batman with detective vision, taking guys down stealthily. That's how you take down Two-Face in this game. He's just among his thugs. So you can take him down first, and then you have to take out his henchmen. But that's how you take him down in this game. Other times he'll be sewn into a cinematic, very much like Uncharted, where you're watching, and then there's an action, or maybe there won't even be an action.
Okay.
So I think they really tried to be like, let's not do these old school boss fights anymore. And I think I think Mr. Freeze was a good example of how they used their mechanics well,
Right.
And made it feel like it was kind of an organic part of the game, and that's what really kind of how they play out in this. I think there's yes, I miss the old school style thing where you feel like this guy is just going to beat the crap out of me. Mm-hmm. You don't really get that in this. You always feel like Batman kind of has the upper hand,
right?
Which is kind of cool too. I mean, you are Batman and you've taken these guys down 1 billion times. Why can't you do it again?
Right.
But yeah, there's definitely something missing there, but it is still kind of cool to see them experiment in a different way.
Well, that's what you talk about, that seamlessness, and that's the most impressive thing of the game so far in the early hours is the camera work. It's a weird thing to call it, but I think it's like the most impressive camera work I've ever seen in a game. Like it
over God of War.
Yeah, I'll say so.
Yeah.
It's the Birdman of action games. Like the camera never cuts. It's just constantly swooping around, especially like driving the Batmobile up, and then you have the option to like do the Batman dive kick like through a window to take out a guy, and having that all one seamless thing where the camera's rotating around going in slow motion as he's busting through the window. It looks awesome.
It's important that you appreciate that you referenced Birdman. Starring Michael Keaton.
That's right.
Basic. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that you had made that connection.
I did not think about that in that way, but yeah, you're right.
And that's a big change for the series. They no longer have those pre-rendered cinematics in there,
right.
Which at first I thought that was going to be kind of a detractor from this experience because I thought those were really cool. And it was a nice reward, almost like playing Final Fantasy VII way back in the day where it's like, oh, we got a movie playing. This is going to look really cool. But their in-game graphics are so good in this one and they do cool things with the camera and the animation and stuff. You don't really notice it being gone.
Right.
If anything, it just makes the experience seem to be streamlined a little better.
So, Tim, have you started playing this game yet? What's your experience?
Well, my experience is downloading it on my PC and realizing I have an AMD graphics card and that I might be kind of out of luck for now. So,
right.
I might just pick it up.
Yep. As note, PC's having a lot of problems.
Yeah.
So anyone thinking about buying PC, you might want to at least hold out.
Yeah, those Steam reviews are scathing. It's really, really bad. And I've been playing on PC. I have like a 770, and it's running just like crap. There's not even like
NVIDIA
high. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's not even like a high settings options for a lot of things. It just goes up to normal. And even if I put everything on low, it still will chug. Especially with the Batmobile. Like in the beginning, I didn't think it was too bad, but it's right on bordering on like unplayable, just because it's so frequent now. So I guess I'll just bring it down to 720 and hope for them to patch it. And
yeah, that's tough. We played on PS4 for the review, and then we also got in. If you look at our test chamber that's online, we did that on Xbox One.
Okay,
both of those seem pretty even in terms of performance.
Yeah,
but who's to say they do some crazy stuff in this game later on with effects, like toward the last 80% of the game. That maybe that'll make one of them chug. I don't know, but I played all the way through PS4 and it was pretty smooth.
Okay,
So
that's good to hear.
you can play it on console, I guess. I hate to say that, but
Yeah, Warner says they're on it, but they haven't given much of like a timeline on the whole thing. So.
And also, they revealed in that
Well,
we're
we
on
got a
it
lot of
thing.
work to figure out what's wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not just like, oh, hey, we're on it,
Right.
and it's done.
Yeah.
It's going to take some time.
They even phrased it in a way where they're like, yeah, our PC development partners or something, which implies that it was not done on
Oh.
Rocksteady. The PC version was done out of house. So
it's fairly common, but they should
Yeah.
be more upfront about that kind of stuff.
right. It's a little bit of a letdown, but again, overall amazing experience, Reiner.
Oh yeah, it was such a fun ride from start to finish. Well, I shouldn't say ride because the Batmobile is not that much fun, but the story is really compelling from start to finish, and it gets better as it goes. And as those mysteries are solved, they pay attention to comic book fans. If you've been reading comics, your whole life, there's a lot of really nice nods in there. But also, it kind of harks back to Arkham Asylum too. So if you started with those games, you're going to see a lot of callbacks.
Does it feel like I mean, they've said this is the end of our run on Batman as far as Rocksteady goes. Does it feel like closure?
It's the end of the Arkham story.
Really?
Sure.
You
Yeah,
think so?
I don't think they're done with Batman, but I think this is the end of the Arkham story.
So you
for
could see like Warner Brothers coming out with Batman.
Oh, yeah.
Something else.
for the next 50 years, as long as they sell. Yeah.
Okay. We'll have like a super.
I could see Rocksteady coming back with something more.
Do they tease
in the
next
Batman
project
universe?
in this game?
I'm not going to say anything. Just
Do
play.
you see
play
like
the game.
the Ninja Turtles peek out from underneath the sewer or something? Because that's all I want.
Yeah.
As the Batmobile runs over it, and then
Right. I specifically asked them about that rumor, by the way, and they confirmed on the record they are not even considering a Ninja Turtles.
I mean,
game.
I would be excited. I mean, Montreal, I thought, did a pretty decent job with the last Batman game.
Yeah.
I think we've got a lot of Batman games in a row. I would love to see Rocksteady do something different.
Yeah.
To tell
Oh,
the truth.
yeah,
I
for
mean,
sure.
I think if I had a vote, I mean, that's where I would go. I'd like to see what they could do with something else.
100%.
There are some images and mentions of characters and maybe even voices of characters that you hear in this game that are not from the Batman universe proper.
I think I know what you're referencing, and I will carry on your tradition of not spoiling anything. But I've seen those things. Those things got me more excited for what else they might be able to do within even just other comic universes and stuff. So
Yeah. Gotcha. So, other big game that came out the Friday
hold on a
before
second.
E3. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, what'd you give Arkham Knight?
9.5 out of 10.
Awesome.
There we go.
Cool. Sorry, Ben.
So you hated
fine.
it.
Absolutely scathing.
You hated it. Okay, all right. Just double checking.
So, other big game came out Friday before E3 was Lego Jurassic World.
Yeah.
Reiner, I saw you've been playing this a little bit.
Yeah, I'm having a good time.
How far are you in that thing?
Dinosaurs. I'm about 3/4 of the way through Jurassic Park.
Okay.
You didn't go the world route because early on you got to choose. I think it's right after the prologue.
Right. So you get a little bit of a tutorial. Then, like, as the helicopter lands on Jurassic Park for the first time, you can choose if you want to go to World or go through the
Yeah.
Park trilogy.
Oh, I had no
Right.
idea. I was just following those glowing or the little crystal pellets.
Never looking up.
The
Yeah,
studs along the path.
Yeah, you can skip straight to the Jurassic World stuff if you
Yeah.
want. But we played some on a test chamber, and I actually started playing some too, some more co-op.
Yeah.
Played a bunch last night actually.
Did you get past where we were in the test chamber?
Yeah.
Because that was a long one.
Yeah, I did. Went like the T-Rex paddock and the what are those things? What type of car is it? You always know.
Oh, Ford Explorer.
Ford Explorer.
Yeah.
It falls down the side of it, and you gotta do a goofy sequence to get up there. And I don't know. I guess I'm having an okay time with it.
Oh, it's a Lego game.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of surprised we're discussing it. It's like, I feel like you could like describe it in 5 words
Yeah.
or less, and we could be
Do it.
done.
I want to hear it. Hold on, Andy. 5 words or less.
I didn't play it. I was saying
There
you
it is.
guys.
I didn't play it.
You guys.
2 exclamation marks. But anyway, there's not that much that needs to be said about it. I think my main complaint is the fact that like you'll just have to suddenly you get to a part where you need to catch up with somebody and switch to another character,
Right.
And then you have to catch up with them. Like you don't just warp to them, and you have to like figure out where you are because the park's pretty big.
Yeah, it's weird how they try and transition you between characters that way. It's a little bit obnoxious. But my biggest beef with this game, like Jurassic Park is my favorite movie of all time, and so I was excited to see how they're going to kind of boil down the story. And it gets really strange how they
Wait,
do
hold
it.
on. You just,
Hold
wait,
on.
Jurassic Park's your favorite movie of all time?
all time, Andy. Yeah.
Well, hold on.
surprise.
But you're turning to a Lego game to see how it handles a story? Like,
Well, just out of curiosity, like, how do you boil down that story and reuse those voice clips in a way to make it make sense, especially with like the amount of violence in Jurassic Park?
So you remember the first time they drive through the T-Rex paddock and the T-Rex doesn't show up and it's the goat and
Right.
that whole gag and stuff, and like there's a lot of potential for a goat gag in there, but for trying to condense it into a game, like they have to breeze past a lot of stuff.
And that's kind of the bummer is like before, when the game was announced, I remember like Jeff Cork and I were like, all right, let's run down what Lego's going to do for all these classic scenes, what the dumb joke's going to be. And like, there are less jokes than you think.
Yeah.
Mainly, yeah, because they have to trim it so much, but then also just like they go for the cool shots sometimes just to look cool. Like, oh, this is when the T-Rex busts through the wall here. Let's just play it straight. It's like, no one wants that. Like, I want a joke in every cutscene.
They seem it's a little more on the nose than I would have liked.
Yeah, it's more like the Lord of the Rings than, where they're using actual movie dialogue.
Which sounds like hot garbage, by the way.
Yeah, it's like really mono.
Well, it's weird. I think I don't know. I would love to talk to them to figure out like what sort of audio tracks they got from Universal for this thing, because it just sounds like they got the movie dialogue and then tried to like filter out.
It sounds like it was played
noise.
through like a VCR.
And especially when it's like some new recorded VO next to the Jurassic Park VO, it just sounds bizarre.
And the levels are off too, I've noticed in some areas. Like that Joffrey has they went for a gag where like he's talking like his tongue is numb.
I think you need to explain who Joffrey is.
Joffrey's the guy who Joffrey raised.
I was thinking Game of Thrones. I'm like, wow, this just got awesome.
No, that I don't think Joffrey's inclusion in anything would be awesome. But regardless,
he's the guy that's eaten by the raptor in the very beginning.
Joffrey raised the gate, and he has like this numb tongue, so he's just kind of talking like this, and I think it's because he's like. He put his electric prod in his mouth or something like that. But anyway, that audio is mixed way higher than just like, these really canned like Muldoon Australian, lines from the movie. And they just don't blend really well.
They should all be destroyed.
Exactly. They don't sound, it's not very funny so far.
I think there's funny. I think the original VO and the original dialogue that they wrote for it can be funny. Like the whole raptor sequence in the long grass in Lost World, I think is super funny, mainly because like this game goes out of its way to have constantly dinosaurs be a threat, but to not show anybody being killed. So it'd be like raptors just like violently tackling people in the long grass and like tickling them, or like they'll like tackle Sarah Harding from Lost World and like pop her hair off and put it on its head, and then Sarah's screaming because her hair's got just dumb crap.
Spoiler alert. Hold on here.
There's a lot of dumb hair jokes.
The big thing I heard about this game going into it, and I just got a taste of it last night, is playing as dinosaurs.
Right.
So I played as a Triceratops. Control is a little clunky. How are the other dinosaurs? Like,
it's a Triceratops.
is that cool, or is it mishandled?
It's fine through like the first three. You'll occasionally switch to a dinosaur, and like the only abilities I think in the first three that they really have is the ability to like break through a wall. And it's like, all right, then switch back to humans. It's exactly like the Batmobile, but. In Jurassic World, it gets a little bit more interesting, where the Raptor SEAL Team 6 unit from the movie, like they control just like Lego characters. Like they can build, they have more complex moves.
Weird. Because they're intelligent. Is that the idea?
That's right. So you get to play as your precious Blue or whatever Raptor you love so much from that movie. Charlie,
he's your boy.
Yeah, all that stuff. But it's fun to see how they handle the story and try and boil it down. But it's also pretty buggy. I've had a lot of weird glitches where characters will get stuck on stuff, and then the worst part is that glitch is bundled with a glitch where you can't switch back to the other character.
Perfect.
So then I have to I'm playing on PC, so then I go to my keyboard to like start a new game in a split screen, then like inch along with that character, but then you can't drop out from the keyboard, so you're stuck still.
It's an Easter egg. What it is, it's a callback to when you couldn't get two Lego blocks apart, like at all. You're trying to use a butter knife and your fingernails and stuff doesn't
put
work.
it in your teeth and you swallow it, and you go to the hospital.
It's just like that.
Yeah, it's
good times.
So there's some fun to be had here, but
Joe gave it a 6 out of 10. That was lower than I thought it was going to be.
I understand the criticism, even though I'm having fun.
Yeah, so it seems like they put a lot of effort into the Jurassic World portion.
Yeah,
and I think that even though Jurassic Park's my favorite, it seems like the game quality gets better and better, and the writing gets funnier because they stray more away from just using the actual movie dialogue. They start to write their own. And when they do that, even for like known characters that have VO in the movies, I think it really shines.
I think that's when their Traveler's Tales is at their best, when they're doing like the Batman games and it's an original script by them.
Right.
They're not having to call back to these things. So
yeah, for sure.
That's
Lego
kind of
Batman 2 is so funny. Yeah, I still love that game. So that's Lego Jurassic World, everybody. We should start mopping up some E3 stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Andy, Andrew, you guys went through, you spent, how much of E3 percentage-wise did you have something dumb on your head?
Not that long. I mean, we missed one Morpheus meeting because we went to Oculus. We kind of had trouble moving around. I know, faux pas. But we at some point things start to get difficult when you're just trying to like get everything in. And so we did Reiner and I played Riggs on maybe Tuesday, I think.
That's a Morpheus game. Yeah,
it was like the last thing we did on Tuesday.
And I think we were both kind of sick for a while after that.
So it's like an action game?
So Riggs is a futuristic sports ball game. I guess you're in mechs.
Uh-huh.
And you're battling as mechs, but you have to get a ball and then like
I played
slam
Metroid
dunk
Prime
it.
Blast Ball. I think I understand how this works.
And then you got to like jump through the air through like a colander and score points.
Huh.
Basically, when you shoot the other mechs, they drop like orbs. You pick up those orbs and it like supercharges you. And once you become supercharged, you have to go through the hoop that's in the middle, which like, everyone knows that you've become supercharged when you're like going for the hoop, right? Kind of thing. And then they can try to come up and block you or stop you or kill you, right? But all the movement in the game is done with your head. So all the aiming is done by looking.
Oh, I don't.
So and then like it does a lot of things where like when you die, it shoots you up into the air, and then you pick a spot on the ground to shoot back down to get back.
Okay.
Oh no, it's not that cool. Like that's the part that you're like, whoa.
Yeah. Conceptually,
I like that. Like it feels like you're on a roller coaster. If you haven't used VR before, there's something that goes on in your brain where you actually kind of start feeling things.
Right. Quickly, you should tell that glitch story. That's my favorite
Okay,
thing.
yeah, we IGN, Steve Butts, right?
Yeah.
He was on this. This is going to sound made up, but there is a VR demo for Morpheus where you're riding a physical bicycle and they have the headset on you, so you're actually on a bike that's in place.
Okay.
But that bike is simulating riding a horse in the game.
okay.
So
I hate the future.
So picture Steve Butts from IGN doing this, riding this, and then he told us like his game glitched and he was just rocketed like 1,000, 2,000 feet in the air and then just plummeted back down
Like
to the
shot
ground.
into the side of a mountain or something like that is what he said. And they-
Projectile vomit, or
Well, the people from Sony like rushed over, like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" Like,
because of the in-game glitch.
yeah, of what it
I
probably
never
did to
thought
his
about
brain.
that before, because if your brain is convinced you're actually there, which is the entire point of VR,
Yeah.
glitches could just traumatize you
Yeah.
forever.
So he's like, "I'm on a horse."
Well, I was
Away
doing.
he
I mean,
goes.
I'll tell you. I mean, that's weird. I mean, in the Riggs game, when I started to feel a little ill, every time I had to choose a new spot and I would pick the spot, I would close my eyes
Oh.
to avoid the like. Well, part of it is it didn't quite fit on my face right, so I was getting like I could see out, so I wasn't quite getting full presence because I have glasses, which is still a problem for both Oculus and Morpheus. People with glasses still have challenges.
How
and
do
it's
they
annoying.
not factor that in?
It's funny when we were at Oculus, they were like, "Yeah, man, you should totally get surgery or smaller glasses." And I was like,
Put
"That's
lasers
not
in your
the-
eyes."
Yeah, it's like that's not my problem. That's your problem, right? Like I got the glasses I got. That's what I'm gonna wear.
Oculus is going to come with a LASIK coupon.
As a special edition bundle,
Or
just
just
does
lasers
LASIK
that
as you're
shoot your
walking.
eyes.
I will say this. This is something I thought was really interesting. And so I at the time, I'm more farsighted. Right. Wait, nearsighted. No, nearsighted. Whatever. It's always the opposite, right? So I tend to be blind from things far away. So if I take my glasses off, I can like hold my phone up and read it, like right here, right? So I was like, oh, hey, well, I'll just take my glasses off and put on Oculus.
Sure.
And when you put it on, even though the screen is like well within my vision,
Right.
it's blurry.
How does that work?
I know. How does that make your brain like break or what? Like
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
totally confused by that. But like, so I can't. I still have to have my vision corrected for
Right.
distance.
Well, yeah, because it's like if your eyes are being fooled into thinking you're there, then they're going to do the same thing as if you were there.
I got it. I'm just telling you,
Yeah,
it's still
it's
screwing with my
nuts.
brain. Like I get it, but like so that would not work. So I have to have my glasses on or I mean, I can wear contacts, and they did. Well, you should wear contacts. It's like, well, thanks.
Sure.
I mean, I got that, but like that is one of the challenges. But I definitely I could see the room in Riggs, and that might have been part of the reason why it made me feel.
Okay.
And and the other thing too is at E3 you don't eat. Like we
Right.
don't eat. Like we just it starts in the morning and it goes right until
right.
it's over. And so probably the combo is not the best for like getting in there and like getting in a hot room at E3, put this thing on
Right,
your
right.
face and fly around the world. Like it's a combo.
Like I didn't feel sick from it as I was playing it. Like I was engaged in the game and I was having a decent time. I thought it was fairly nicely designed.
Sure.
It moved faster than I thought it would in VR. Like it definitely gave me, even
definitely,
just
yeah.
running gave me a sensation. But it was afterwards when Andy and I were just walking through the convention hall. I looked over at him. I was like, this was like 20 minutes removed. I was like, I still feel like I just got off a roller coaster. You know that feeling
Yeah.
where your body's not quite right?
Right.
And if you knew if you did it for a couple more hours,
equilibrium?
you'd be sick.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's from that thing where they say it has to play at 90 frames per second. I don't know if it, or
I
maybe
don't
it was moving too fast,
Oh.
where it like tricks the bone in your ear that tells you need to vomit or whatever.
Well-
your
Right.
sense of stability.
I mean, one of the things I think is interesting about VR right now, and I'm pretty pro. Like I'm really excited about VR. I think one of the things is that one of the first things everyone says, and we even kind of made that joke here in the office, is that like, why would you ever make a third-person game in VR, right? Like we're all like thinking like Lawnmower Man. We're all thinking about how we take a game, like a game we play now with a controller, and how do we put it in VR, right? Because that's
Right.
just the way we think immediately.
Sure.
So like Riggs to me it was fun, right? I mean, it wasn't but it's like, how do we take a game we know, like shooting kind of things at each other in mechs, and put it in VR? And it's beautiful, right? It's really cool to see the VR. It's really cool to see the other mechs, and all that stuff is really cool in VR and first person. But it's not addressing like maybe what is best for an experience in VR, right? Which I think is a different question.
Sure.
And I think that's a question that some of these developers are looking at and trying to figure out, which I thought Oculus had done a really good job. Like when we went to those demos, you know, Reiner and I sat there for like maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours and played Oculus games. I didn't feel sick at all. Right, like nothing.
And this
right?
was sealed, like it fit around your glasses?
It didn't fit around my glasses the whole way. There was still the Oculus still has that same challenge, right?
Okay.
But the games were all different. Like they weren't trying to be like video games that we know now in VR, right? They were trying to do something different. Like one of the ones, we even kind of made fun of it, which was Edge of Nowhere, Insomniac. When we saw it at the press conference, we were like, yay, third-person action game. And then we went there and we played it, and I was like, this is amazing. And the reason is like a lot of the games are very arcade-like. They're very simple. So this game in particular was just an analog stick and jump, right? That's all it was. And you're like, okay, all right, not very complicated. But once
It's like a temple run in VR?
Yeah, like an Uncharted platforming, climbing walls.
You start off on the side of like a Himalayan mountain, right?
Okay.
And you're just kind of climbing up and and it's, you can kind of look over the edge. And so it's more the like, I kind of felt like it was kind of like cookies and cream, like pat your head, rub your tummy kind of thing. You know what I mean? So you're like trying to look around and navigate, and your guy is kind of on a set path to some degree, but you need to pay attention so you don't fall off the edge. And then that kind of starts to magnify. Then you get inside, and then all of a sudden, like, you have to cross this little area where there's little holes in the iceberg, right? But at the same time, there's this giant beast driving over the top of you. So you're like, I gotta look. You know what I mean? You want to look at the big giant creature, but you don't want to fall. So you're kind of trying to move and look at this thing and go like, that's amazing.
It's like Shadow of the Colossus scale creatures, like big AT-AT, quadruped walking overhead, and you're like focused on this path, but at the same time, you naturally want to look at it. So, and when you do that, you're no longer looking at your character. So it's just a very natural thing that you do in a game. When you're playing a third-person game as is, you might kind of tilt the camera and look at it, but you got to stay focused here. When it's just your eyes and you kind of just start looking over like that, it's very different. And you try to keep the character still in frame so you can keep playing, keep your eye on this threat. But it's very different.
Right? And also, like, the pace of the game is put in the character now, right? So, like, he can move fast without the camera moving fast, right? So it slows the game down. I think, hits some of those challenges of people feeling uneasy in VR. And we saw this repeated in another game, Chronos, was basically, I think, for lack of a better term, it's Zelda in VR.
And isn't it like former Vigil guys?
It is.
Yeah,
it is. Okay. It is. And you kind of come in, and the first thing you do is you go to this kind of room, and there's a big giant like stone creature at the end. Like I started to run toward it, and the guy goes, "Don't run towards that." He's like, "That's a bad idea." Because look to your right, and then you look to the right, and there's a hinge, that you can grab.
Okay.
And so he's like, "Do that," and then you start to pull it, and then you realize that behind you, to your left, the door is opening. So you start looking at this and turning, and then looking back to see how much it's open, and then all of a sudden that guy gets up and starts to come after you. So you're like turning, door, guy, turning, door, guy. Like as you kind of like try to, and that's the gameplay, right? It's not that it's hard to open the hinge; it's that it's the moment of this giant creature guy walking up that is like, that's where the suspense comes from, right?
Sure.
And you get the door open, and then you like run through the door, and he starts to chase you, and it just kind of begins the whole thing, and you're just exploring the world with your view rather than like being immersed. But it's very, 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 I know it sounds silly to say, but it's really, really immersive when you can look up and go, oh, whoa, I'm in the middle of a volcano, or what, you know what I mean? Like when you start to like realize where you are and that presence that comes with it, it's really interesting.
One thing that's a little different about this one, they're both, kind of your traditional action games. Edge of Nowhere is your, the camera tracking in third person. This one is more like classic Resident Evil games where they place the camera in an environment, where they want in the environment. It could be on this wall.
And it'll cut? Like security cam?
Yeah, so you come through a door.
Weird.
And then maybe the camera will move over here, and then you have control of that camera as you're looking around. So it's really dynamic, really clever how they kind of put it together. And the camera's usually in a position where, like Andy said, like, you're getting the best vantage point of what's going to be happening, or enemies coming from the side or whatever.
Sure.
And it had more like, parries and rolls. I mean, this was like more like classic like game controls like on there. So it was pretty advanced overall, but it was fun. I mean, I was having fun with that. There was the Lucky's Tale was a lot of fun too. It's just it could have been made by Naughty Dog or Insomniac, 20 years ago, but you're just like sitting at this crazy table with like colorful graphics and your little guy running around picking stuff up. It's a classic platformer. Really,
You're
really
a fox,
cool.
yeah.
And that's enough. Just being immersed in that world, it just feels like a whole new experience.
Yeah,
from
it
third
really
person.
does.
Just
It
how
really
you can
does.
view it, yeah.
I like that angle because I like referencing Jurassic Park before. There's always that scene where like Tim is watching the T-Rex get like attack the Gallimimus, and he's just like stunned watching it for a second. It's just like, and he has to be pulled away from it. You're watching that like as someone in the theater. You're just kind of like, run, you idiot! What are you doing? Why are you gawking at that? I love the idea that VR can bring you there, so you're making those superhuman like mistakes and just kind of standing in awe of something while you should be focusing on.
You want to look at the Cthulhu monster?
Yeah.
Another good example of that is there's a VR sports game that's coming out. It looks like it's going to maybe be a sports sampler. They let us play like hockey.
Yes.
Is
that
it
was the
on
only game they
Oculus or
had.
Morpheus?
Oculus.
Okay.
And they put you in the role of the goalie. And so you see the goalie mask, and then there's like one player that's like talking to you, and he's like getting kind of close, and you get that kind of evasion of your personal space when he gets
Right.
close. You're just kind of like, oh, that's a little creepy.
Right.
But he tells you, get ready. They're going to come faster on the power play, and the puck's dropped, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, okay, I'm the goalie. All you have to do is block left or right. But the big trick is keeping your eye on that puck as players are going by in front of you. They're passing fast.
It's like a cup game.
I did this. I was sitting in the chair, and the guy goes like, "All right, let's do it." And then the guy goes over, and there's the face off to my left, and I went, and I leaned forward, I totally leaned forward, like I was like, I gotta block this stuff, right? I gotta get this, I immediately did, and I was like, God, I'm so dumb for doing that, but I really did. It was like, well, man, I gotta make sure I don't let this through, and then and when Reiner says when they start moving through, and the passing goes across, you're like, whoa, because you got to be looking in that general direction to figure out because it kind of, the trajectory towards you is like you have to make that decision kind of last second, whether it's right or left.
What are your hands doing? Like, what are you?
You just on a controller,
It's
just
control,
right or
left and
left.
right,
Okay.
just left and right on the control pad. But it's tough, and then like sometimes you get you're late on the save because it's timing based, and you'll get a rebound, which like in hockey you're like, oh, rebound, whatever, but like it sucks. You know what I mean? Like when that puck comes off you and another guy gets in the shot immediately,
And you don't know where it is initially.
and you're just like, it was a real. I was like. Okay, first of all, I was like, once again, wrong, because I was like, VR Sports, dumbest thing ever.
Right,
and then I was like, VR Sports, totally awesome. I mean, it was so fun.
So it was just like a bunch of those mini games. You think it has the potential of being like a Wii Sports?
I mean,
it shows the potential of how you can take something that you kind of look at. Like you've seen first person in sports games before, and you didn't feel that connection to that world. But you see it here, and you really do feel like you're kind of there in that goal. The characters have size and weight. They're intimidating in front of you. And then just the simplest thing of just watching something is, you make fun of goal or you yell at goalies when you go to sports games all the time, but it's like, that's a hard job.
It's interesting because like I think what I think of when I hear that is like, oh, that's cool. Like you can be a goalie. I don't want to play an entire NHL career as a goalie.
No.
How does it work? How would it work? For like trying to be a right wing or something like that, and trying to actually control your speed.
Eventually, you do go on a breakaway where the puck gets cleared from the zone, and then they just kind of have this.
you look
It's
at
not a
the
very
net,
great
yeah.
like shooting mini game where
Okay.
you do get a chance to score a goal of your own, but it's not in the head of the character. You're kind of trailing behind it in third person.
Okay.
I mean, since this is like the second year of VR being a big push at E3, I guess I was expecting a little bit something more than just a bunch of tech demos. But that's what it feels like.
It
still
felt
all
like
is,
a
right?
launch lineup of games to me.
did?
Yeah, it did. I mean, these definitely like I think Morpheus still has a lot of demos. I mean, I think. Riggs was definitely a game, right? That's
Right.
one of the ones that, like, I think that's why they highlighted it, because that's the one that's probably closest to a game.
Right.
But I mean, these feel like games. I mean, that said, is one of them a system seller yet? Is one of them someone's put $10 million into a game and it's blowing the doors open? It's
Right.
like an Uncharted kind of thing. I don't think we see that yet.
Right.
But like I said, I really feel like this is one of the reasons I think Morpheus should not be in the game. By the way, I have my own personal opinion about it. I
Not
think,
be in the race, the VR race.
I think they should be a part of it, and they should be learning and trying to move forward. But I think there's still a lot of problems to solve, right? And I think Oculus is doing a good job of trying to they have a lot of money. I mean, they got Facebook money, and they're trying to solve them. And I think there's a lot of things to solve. I think before we build this billion-dollar game or $100 million game, we still have to figure out more about the technology. I mean, some other guys argue with me that it's already there, and I think it is really close to there. And I want one, and I'm going to buy one. And I giggled for an hour and a half while we were in there. I had so much fun in that.
It was the worst thing.
I had so much fun. I really did. I had so much fun. I want it so bad. But there's other things about halfway through, I was like, man, I'm parched. I don't know how to get my water, right?
Where am
I?
You're like licking the ice in the hockey simulator.
Or like when I watched Reiner do Toy Box, which we'll talk about soon, like he had to put the half moon things on his hands, and like the guy had to come up and like put them on Reiner's hand and put them on Reiner's head, and like the whole thing. It was like if there was a fire, it'd be like, see you, Reiner. You know what I mean? Like,
it's like, like the demos would end and the screen would just kind of go to black, and you're in these headphones and you got something over your eyes, and you're like, hello?
Am I dead?
Anyone here? And then you're standing up like the Toy Box thing. It's like, Andy, don't pull down my pants.
Yeah.
Like that is going to be a common thing. Like just people are going to get their pants
So
pulled
much
down.
pantsing. Yeah. What is this Toy Box thing?
We went to see. This is basically like this is their demo room for the Half Moon, so their touch experience, which I think you have to understand, which is like 2 analog sticks, but it has this like sensor array around it that not only picks up where your hand is in the room, but also picks up motion. Like so you can do like thumbs up. You can point. It doesn't do all your fingers, but these two, you can like, and this is for triggers, right? Yeah. So those move. So you can basically start to manipulate things with those 3 things.
Okay.
Right? And it does tracking, like Morpheus does that as well, like some tracking in the room. And I've also done
Move.
And VR, the Hive demo does some tracking with their hand things as well. Which
and this is like the Valve Lighthouse thing that they were talking about.
Yeah,
Kinda,
yeah, to some degree. I mean, it's like this is their solution to it. And I didn't use this one, unfortunately, because my glasses didn't fit.
So it was a different unit that we were using, a different headset that we were using in this demo.
Okay.
But
Reiner did.
Yeah, the touch controller, it senses your fingers. So if you're just resting your fingers on the buttons, it'll see them there, and you can kind of point. You can make a fist. But you see this in the world, so you're like, whoa, this is crazy. These are
only
my fingers.
3 of your fingers, though.
Yeah,
That's a
but
full
you
hand,
have the
though.
whole hand. But I mean, these 3 are the
Only ones
active
you can
ones.
manipulate.
Right.
But you're like, this is weird. It's like a haptic glove, but it isn't, right? And it feels nice. You got the analog stick on there, and then this Toy Box appears in front of us, and Jason Rubin's. It's a co-op experience. He's in the room with me.
President of Oculus now, or what is his role?
He's the head of Worldwide Studios.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was the founder of Naughty Dog.
Right.
But he's in the room with me, and he's like lawnmower man, wireframe guy. And so I see him doing all sorts of stuff. He's doing like weird Minority Report stuff with the hand to bring up different modes in the game. And I was just like, okay, that's crazy. But basically he put toys out for me to play with. And he's like, go ahead and pick up a block. And I was like, okay. And really, I just went over, grabbed it just like you normally would. And then you're like even leaning over, grabbing stuff, and all sorts of fun stuff to play with, where it's like there's a slingshot. You pick up the slingshot, you pull it back just like a slingshot. You have great precision. You shoot it, and you're like, right there, your brain starts thinking, the applications this could have for a shooter game are super great. Like you could see everyone making games like that. Things like a Zippo. You pick up a Zippo, you open it up, the fire's there, put a firecracker up on it, just like you would in real life. It feels real. Like
Your
it
brain's
tricks your
100%
brain.
convinced.
Oh yeah. You put it there, throw it at Ruben's head, it blows up. He's like, you bastard.
Blood everywhere.
There's like
The graphics were not that advanced, but I mean, like
it was like the functionality was there. There's a ping pong paddle. This one was really impressive, where it wasn't working perfectly, but you pick up the ping pong paddle, there's the ball, and then you just like rest it on the paddle. Just like you're balancing the ball,
Right.
And then you can hit it and then play ping pong together, and it works like it should. And then he even did some things where it's like where you really feel immersed is he pulls up this ray gun, shoots me just like a first-person shooter, like a pistol, shoots me with it. I shrink, and he's just this huge entity in the world.
That is the coolest.
And he like leans in on me and just like kind of yells at me like, "Hey, Reiner!" And it's just like freaky as hell. Your brain's like, "Oh, this is not right."
I heard somebody else describe it as like they've never felt personally threatened in a video game before. That's like a new emotion for games.
It's that invasion of space again, where you're just
Right.
like, "This is weird." Like, I know this isn't real, but it feels like it. And then there's moon gravity too, where you'd switch to moon gravity and the stuff on the table would start floating. You can grab it in the air, but you also kind of feel like you're starting to levitate.
And you're stationary this entire time.
I'm
Right?
standing up.
It's just standing there.
Standing there waiting to get pants.
Okay.
Well, and the funny thing too is that like I was able to watch it like through the screen like what they were doing, and I mean like. Well, Ruben was throwing a lot of things at Reiner's head. First of all, I mean, he was throwing a lot of, but he was
awful.
he could like pick up a puppet and be like, hey, rah, 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 and like manipulate a puppet.
He did that when he shrunk me. He was like,
Reiner like a toddler. That's very cute.
I mean, we were playing like kids.
They were playing like kids. I mean, that's really the thing is that it's not really a game yet, but when you put 2 people in a room where you can like, I mean, they were like lighting firecrackers, throwing things at each other, like playing games and like doing all this stuff in like this kind of social space. Just having fun and kind of VR. There were like orbs that you could grab and be like, throw the orb in the air and break it, and be like, boom, and break it, and like space would happen because space was in the orb. You know what I mean? Like
What?
Oh.
So we're in outer space, and it's like, this is weird.
Yeah, it's like it's just fun, right? And it's
Underwater.
like fun things you couldn't do in real life, right? You do it in VR, and that's what the toy box kind of was. And to show, I mean, I wish I could have done it just because I did do the VR one for Hive, which their controllers were kind of interesting in that like. I did an alien surgery where I had to like grab like a saw and like cut
Hive?
open.
What is?
That's the Valve. The Valve.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, the Valve piece.
Was it called Vive? Oh,
I don't know. It's like I thought it was the Hive was the name of the actual unit itself.
I think
but-
it's VIVE, isn't
Is
it?
it? Is it? Yeah,
I don't know. You
HTC
probably
one.
know better. Yeah.
I might be screwing up, but whatever
Okay.
the HTC Valve unit. You had to do an alien surgery, and like it was hard to be precise. Right? I mean, I had a hard time being precise with
It's like
with their
Surgeon
units.
Simulator with an alien corpse.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. I mean, it was gross actually, but this looked way more precise.
Wow.
Like they were doing way more precise things than I did in the Valve demo. Not to say the Valve demo wasn't
Instantly.
cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, this was definitely from afar. I was very impressed by how well Half Moon worked as far as a way to manipulate objects. Because that's the hard part, is manipulating objects. And, you know, that's the thing is I think even in those demos was like that someone could hand you something and that you could reach out to grab something like it's been handed to you, just like I would hand you a piece of paper, which sounds really odd. Because like if I start you, I go, here, hold this. You go, oh, okay, grab that.
Right.
But in VR, I go, hey, hold this. And you go, oh, okay. Hey, wait a second.
Yeah, it's
that's
super
just
weird.
crazy that
Yeah.
I just like grabbed this out of virtual space
Yeah.
And it
without a second thought, right? Like you just do it.
Right.
and the table was probably about as big as this, and I was in the middle of it, and I could lean over all the way to the side, and it would recognize where I was in space, like
Okay.
accurately, like I was grabbing at things and not
Yeah.
missing.
One thing you guys haven't brought up yet is HoloLens.
Yeah,
How's that compare?
Yeah, I mean, I like HoloLens. I mean, I think
different.
It's different. I mean, it's an AR experience. HoloLens, I feel like has a lot of really great like productivity things, like that it can do. I mean, from the demos, and we talked about it on a podcast before about all
Right.
the things I saw at Microsoft.
But how often are you going to be changing a light bulb through Skype? You know.
I mean, I think the future's more cool than you think it is. I mean, I think you could do a lot of really great stuff with it. And in this case, I did the Halo demo at the event where you kind of they created this kind of Spartan experience. It was, you know, they had a set where you were on a ship. I don't know what, Infinity or something like that.
Right.
And you walk through and it would be like, oh, and they taught you like you were Spartan. It was kind of half role play, half like
Weird. Okay.
half HoloLens kind of thing.
Right.
And so they would go, hey, Spartan, put this on, Spartan. Okay, look for your waypoint, Spartan. And then like down the hall, you would see a waypoint appear in air, right? And you'd walk to your
Okay.
waypoint, and then you'd turn, there'd be another waypoint. You'd walk to the next waypoint, and the guy would walk up, you know, human, and be like, hey, welcome, Spartan. We're preparing for war. Look out the porthole. And you'd look out the porthole, and you know, oddly enough, they made it perfect size. So like the set fit exactly the same size as the HoloLens.
Because the
HoloLens.
HoloLens is not full field of view. It's just like a little window.
It's
right?
like a little window that floats in front of your
it's like
face.
this, like
Yeah.
an inch from your face.
I mean, I
like
really
this.
feel like if you held your phone about 5 inches to 6 inches in front of your face, that's what's considered, I call, for lack of a better term, kind of the live area.
right. Okay.
So anything that's not in there is not real, which is why I said the like during the press conference, I was like, this is not like when they show that version that like that guy's like swimming in Minecraft, right? You know,
Lydia. Yeah.
you know, yes, that stuff is around you and you can look at it and it's there, but the experience isn't like I'm like totally crazy.
It's not in your
you
periphery.
know, yeah,
Got
it's
it.
just not all over you. It's like in that porthole, that live area that you look at.
Right.
When you move the live area, you see more stuff and it's really interesting and there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with it. Like literally you could have a table like disappear and like turn into a Minecraft thing, and it's really cool and it's amazing how, I mean, there's amazing technology happening,
Right.
but it's not like I'm falling in some Minecraft hole, and like it's just a different experience.
You've seen that on 3DS a little bit, where they have the table, like a hole appears in your table.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
the same kind of thing, just on a bigger stage,
Right.
kind of.
So is there any practicality to that Halo thing, or is it just to show off the tech and make you feel like you're planning this mission?
I think it was to show up the tech. They went through and
Okay.
they did like a classic Star Wars, like then they brought up and they like, here's the report, like when you would be attacking the Death Star and said it was like, here's how our multiplayer game works. Basically, and they
right,
went through and they
right.
showed all the stuff. And there was like a little Spartan that walked around. I mean, it's cool. I mean, that's the thing. It is very, very cool. Like the game applications, I think are going to take some time. I think there's a lot of things like technology that can get better as they learn how to make that field of view a little bit bigger and kind of in and out, because
Sure.
it is. That's the thing is these are things happening in your environment, right? So that is really cool, but I just wish I could see more of that stuff happening in my environment and the environment at the same time, because it certainly fixes any kind of like problems of feeling ill, you know, that VR does. I can actually like look at my phone. I can actually grab that glass of water I wanted when I was
wires.
in VR, right?
Right,
You know what I
right.
mean? There was a lot of things that AR offers that are really, really cool, and a bonus to why they're very, going to be cool as they get better.
Right.
But I mean, both
How
these
is-
all
how-
these technologies are they're learning right now,
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
But how is that going to apply in your home? Like you're going to get a waypoint and it's like going to go in your bathroom. And
Right.
then you're going to be like, your porthole, and you're like looking in your toilet, and there's like Master Chief in the water, like giving you a
That's
mission
exactly
briefing.
how it's going to work, Reiner.
I mean, how does that apply at home though? Like, there's
Yeah.
a bug shooting game where it's like, if you have like paintings all over the walls and all that stuff, and bugs are crawling out of the woodwork realistically on their set,
right.
what's that going to look like in your smaller room? How is it going to read all that stuff and know like, okay, he only has 2 feet or whatever to,
Sure.
to shoot these bugs?
what you
I mean, I don't know. But I mean, you could do like, hey, I'm watching TV, and you're like, oh, I need to go out in the yard and grab something. You could put on your HoloLens and like put the television show like up in the corner, or like have the baby monitor like in the other corner, and like watch different things at the same time while you complete
That'd
a
be cool.
task. You
Yeah.
could be working on dinner and go like, oh man, it tells me I got to cut out this like thigh bone. I don't know what I'm doing. Hey, how do I cut out
These
this
are
thigh
cool
bone? And,
things,
like,
not games though.
As your
That's-
HoloLens
that's why I said
steams up.
productivity, I think, is a big
right.
part. Like the big first step I feel for AR is going to be productivity. I mean, I know every electronic device ever has ended up making a game. And that's the thing is someone can turn it into like kick punch. It's all in the mind. Like, and like have me do like these like productivity things and find a cool way to do it. Because that's
Right.
what gamers, that's what game developers do. They find entertaining ways to make these perhaps more boring activities entertaining, right?
Oh man, I was mowing the lawn. I was
Yeah.
like out in outer space.
Well,
Yeah,
lawnmower.
but you could be they could turn you into Pac-Man and put like pellets all over your yard
As
and
you
you'd be like-
vacuum or
you know what I mean. Like there's
Right.
ways that you could go and make things fun, right? And you could
Right,
definitely
right.
go around or like, hey, I'm going to go ride my bike. I put on my HoloLens. It turns it into this crazy like I'm on indoor, right? And I'm cruising down. I mean, there's a lot of cool
People are
stuff.
gonna die.
Yeah,
doing these
Probably.
things.
Yeah. But I mean, I just think there's a lot of interesting stuff, and I think it's really cool that these companies, Sony, Microsoft, I'm glad they're all in it, right? I mean,
Sure.
I'm just saying they shouldn't launch Morpheus is all I'm saying, and they shouldn't launch HoloLens anytime soon. I don't think either.
Sure.
But maybe HoloLens. I mean, I think
Oculus is the closest.
Oculus is the closest, right? And it's just that like let's get it out there, let's figure out the problems. Let's keep like I love that these companies with all these billions of dollars to waste are wasting it on this because this is cool, right? Like
Right.
this is really, really cool. Let's spend more money of theirs before we spend more money of ours
Sure.
on this.
One of the weird announcements at E3 was that Starbreeze is making their own VR
Yeah.
headset. Did you guys check
Oh,
out
yeah.
the Walking Dead
Yeah,
experience?
I got to play that, and I don't know if this thing's ever coming out. That
It's a weird
the gun
novelty.
itself, I mean, they give you a shotgun, and it is so heavy, just the weight of it. Yes, it's a prototype, but the headset's just gigantic, and it has what is it, 210 degree view screens,
Sure.
like 2 5K screens in there, which is just absolutely ridiculous. But it is a rail shooter that they made where your character's in a wheelchair and you're being pushed through this zombie infested area, and you're using the shotgun just like you really would, and you see it in the game.
Does the shotgun have action? Does that have like
Yeah. So it's, but then you start
Are
thinking
you
like,
aiming? So first person, are you raising the gun?
yep, and you're aiming.
Oh,
And
good.
then like zombies
Oh,
will come right at
okay.
you and you get scared
Yeah.
because you
That's pretty good. In the fact, like
It
there's
is,
no
but
like
it's
gun games don't exist anymore. So this is getting me excited.
But think about
Right.
that though, like, okay, this is a shotgun. My field of vision is blinded. Do I have another gun I pick up later, or is the entire game just using the shotgun?
Right.
Huh.
right.
Do they just all of a sudden say it's an automatic, rifle? Like,
yeah, like it's just a sort of your standard gun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so there's a
yes.
lot of questions there, and it's very ambitious and kind of crazy technology that they have. But
If they deliver
Wow.
on it, then if it's amazing, then people
for that
might
one
show up.
game right now, like they haven't announced everything
Will
with
you
this
spend
headset. but-
$300 to play one really cool?
That sounds really cool. Where you
What was
lose
that?
me is
Steel
the wheel-
Battalion.
yeah.
You lose me on the wheelchair thing, where it's just like, I want to kind of be exploring a world and doing this, but that does sound cool.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it was definitely impressive technology, and what they showed was cool. You saw like I could see myself going to an arcade and playing this thing.
Yeah.
and being like that's cool.
And-
but buying it and having that whole thing at home for that one game right now, like,
Right,
ooh,
right.
boy.
I'm curious if arcades will become that proof of concept area, but we've talked
Yeah.
about that for a while. How long? What's the timeline on Pet VR? Do you think? Just before there's a little virtual reality mouse or something that a cat can chase around, or you don't have to worry about taking your dog
Maybe
for
a
a
paper
walk.
clip that tells you how to manipulate your Microsoft products.
That'd be so
Like a
great. When the
Clippy.
HoloLens clip,
Yeah.
it just follows you around your house.
And I'm ready.
So the whole VR thing, everyone's so enthusiastic. Everyone that's tried it, I haven't tried it since like the first dev kit for Oculus. I really want to try it at C3, but I didn't get a chance. But it just seems like the ultimate press luxury to like for completely free, you can come check out all this stuff. But
Right. Well,
and
we're
everyone's
also the guinea
enthusiastic,
pigs.
but
We're the guinea pigs that
I
are getting
guess
launched
so.
in the sky as we're riding a horse bike.
I
Right.
will say, I think Reiner said to me as we left, I'm going to buy Oculus on day one. I have
Oculus with like the 2 sensors, even if it's like $1,000.
I don't know if I'll buy the sensors immediately. I think the games that I want first out, I want to see more. Toy Box was just the first pass with like what they can do with that, and maybe
Right.
they show a game between then and now that makes me want that. Right? I don't think. I don't. The Toy Box looks like fun, but like I can only spend so much time with me and another dude like throwing firecrackers at each other. Right? Like,
Eventually, you'll stop giggling.
yeah, exactly. But the games, I think I want to play the games. Like I think the games have gotten on. Like there was another one, Air Mech, that I really enjoyed, which is like a tower defense where you kind of like sat in the middle of a table that was. I don't know. It's crazy. Like you basically a lot of fun. So I enjoyed the games, and to me, they're arcadey and simple. I think at this moment, but I want to play more of them. So I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in. But I think it's definitely a luxury item. I don't know how many they sell.
Yeah. So do you see it as a bit of a fad? Do you think it's here to stay? Is this going to be a huge part of gaming in the future? What's your read
I
on
think
that?
everyone that played these demos at E3 was kind of all in. I didn't hear anyone that was like, I don't know about this. It's like we got samples of games that could be legit, like Edge of Nowhere, Chronos, could be these full-featured experiences that we want from our gaming.
Sure.
But you have to try it for yourself to really know what it is. Like you can't really wrap your brain around it until you try it. And I think that's the biggest stumbling block that Oculus has, or any of these VR manufacturers, is how do you get people to test this stuff out outside of like, maybe it'll be more like Guitar Hero, where it's like you go to someone's house, it's a party, hey, put this on. It's like, okay, I'm going to buy that. And then it kind of snowballs from there. But
Right.
I can't see store setting this up. I can't see this at Toys R Us or
You can
anything like
imagine
that.
kiosks?
Yeah, right?
They would work, right?
I think that's important. I think it's important that they get out there and they get people to play it. I think that's one of the. I think when they did like a press conference, I'm like, the press conference should have been, here's how much it costs. Here are the 5 games we're doing. We sent out 42 or 50 like big rigs. They're driving to every city across America. Here's the schedule. Go
Right.
check it out.
Yeah,
Go
'cause
check it out.
You need
have
people to
check
set
out.
it up for you. You need to know you're seeing it the right way. Does that look clear and all that? You can't just go to a kiosk and be like, oh, what the heck?
Yeah,
That was weird.
They need to
Yeah.
do it. I think it's really it's a cool experience. You need to check out. And that's the other thing too to me. When you ask if this is here to stay,
Sure.
I think back to when I saw Atari 2600 happen, right? And like every game was kind of just basically a weird offshoot of like Pong to some degree. They were
Right.
all really simple as game developers learn to use technology and to make games. And obviously, game developers today are light years ahead of like what that was. But this is new ground. Like this really is new ground. I know we've been to VR before, but I think this time more than ever, they're really getting an opportunity to solve for game because we're starting to get closer to the technology where you're not getting sick, where you're not, they're still having to solve for that. It's not done, but it's so close. Like, that's the thing is it's so close. The speed of technology as far as like phones, how quickly they get more powerful, how quickly PCs are getting more powerful. We're there. I think it's going to happen. Is it going to be like, is VR, is 2016 a year of VR? I don't know. Do you know what I mean? I probably not, but I think it's the groundswell. I think it starts next year. I think we start to see it. I think people start to explore it. I think people start to make great games. I saw Adam Orth the other day on Twitter say, and I thought it was he was, and he's doing a drift in VR, and it's very, very cool in VR. He's pushing for he wants a publisher to go up, step up, put a ton of money into it, and make a giant, huge, gotta have VR game.
It seems like Ubisoft's the company to do that. They're always
They had
big
VR
and
demos. They had VR
experimenting.
demos there. Yeah, they did.
I saw like some Rabbids crap.
Yeah, they had rabbits. They had one where you
That's the
flew
name
around
of
as
it.
an
Rabbit's crap.
They had
Yeah.
one where you flew around as an eagle. They're definitely digging into it, and they I think people see it as there's an opportunity there. I think this is something that is it may start small, and hopefully people don't have too many bad experiences that drive them away. But I really think the ball starts rolling. I think in 2020 at least, we're going to be playing a lot of VR games.
Right next to the Final Fantasy VII remake.
I don't know if I've ever seen you guys so uniformly excited about something.
It is just like a whole new experience when you see what it's capable of.
It's
that
fun.
toy box was really, really impressive.
It's like if Ben was talking about playing on the the Dev Kit 1, and I had an amazing experience. I was really on board with those rough demos, and if it's come as far as along as you guys are saying, that's insane.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
don't know.
Yeah, we ran into Mark Rain outside the conference hall from Epic Games, and he was just singing the praises of this toy box like an anime character with the rivers of tears. Just like, it's the best thing, go play it. So we were like, all right, let's go do this.
Wow.
So
I really-
a lot of people very enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, it seemed to be the star of the show at E3 this year. Cool. We should probably move on to the next segment where we're going to respond to a bunch of emails from the fans. So let's move on to that.
Welcome back to the Game Informer Show. So for the next segment, we're going to kind of make up for last week where we didn't have any email questions.
We were very tired.
Yeah. Very tired, and amidst E3, it's tough to sift through all those awesome emails, but we're catching up with it this week. So these are the emails we got, and you can send those questions to podcast@gameinformer.com. We'll choose the best one, and that'll be the email of the week. We don't have one selected going into this, so we might have to work together to kind of figure out which one we think is the best.
Sure.
All right, so let's kick it off with Gary from Alabama.
That's the best.
Yeah,
Alabama man.
that's right. There seems to be a lot of fanboy-like cheering at the press conferences. Is it all plants? Do they encourage it? As press, do you think it should be handled with more decorum, or is it just part of the fun? And then also asks if the giant Rubik's Cube behind me, if you're watching the video version of the podcast, is functional. No, it is not. It just lights up. So anyway, I think we're just getting at, like, how should they be a bigger event? Or should it be more spectacle and cheering, or should it be toned down? Or
I think that's one of the problems that E3 faces, is that it's kind of like half consumer, half industry. I know for myself, I give kind of a golf clap. I actually hate it when, like, I don't think I'm obliged as press to hoot and holler because you showed me a game. Even the games I'm excited, it's hard.
Right.
Like, there's games there are games I'm excited about, but it's not like, that's not what we're there for. It's not to hoot and holler. Right. So I think a lot of the hoot and hollering that's there, they do let fans in. A lot of times they bring in a fan group. The fan group does scream and yell, and also the PR teams and the marketing teams and everyone that's like on, whatever it's Microsoft or Sony, they scream and yell, right? They try to they try to encourage that and get that kind of as a momentum. But like, I think as a journalist, we're not supposed to stand up and like pump our fist in the air and like take our shirt off because like they announced, remake.
right.
Yeah, I might lean over to we're human beings. We have emotions and we get excited about games. I'll lean over to Andy and be like, whoa, that's cool. I didn't see that coming.
Right.
That's pretty much the level of enthusiasm we kind of show.
Yeah.
But if Miyamoto comes out on stage, it's like, yeah, hey, that's Miyamoto.
polite thing
Give
to
him
do.
a little golf clap.
Yeah, I mean,
It reminds me a little bit when people clap at the end of a movie.
I love that.
You love that?
I'm one of
Do you
those people.
start it? Are you?
I hate it.
It's the first credit. You're
I
like,
bet I probably started one or two in my life. Yeah, it's a nice communal experience. Like, hey, that was a fun ride we all went on. Let's give it a good round of applause.
All right.
I love it.
Okay, Ben.
that movie really acknowledges your effort there.
That's not
Take a
part of
bow.
it.
Take a
Everyone
bow.
in the room acknowledges it's a nice communal vibe.
All right. Matt writes in, longtime reader, listener here, and I'm just wondering, with the success of the Shenmue Kickstarter campaign, do you think the big three and other studios will start implementing this as a new way to secure pre-orders and gag fan support at the same time? Gain fan support?
Yeah.
Also, any chance this helps bring other dormant franchises back, like Crash Bandicoot, Mega Man, Power Stone, Psychonauts? The world needs them, Matt.
Yeah, what was your take on the Shenmue Kickstarter thing?
I mean, my problem is I feel it's misleading to the consumer. That's my biggest problem. I really wish Sony would just, if Sony thinks it's so great to give it time at the show floor, I think Sony should invest and bring Shenmue to their platform. I mean, it's a way for them to like not take risk, which, I'm not saying that every publisher has to take risk. They obviously, they need to make sure they're still business. We want them to still be in business, right? Because it's like, if I want games, we need the game companies to be in business, right? So I don't need them just throwing money away. But at the same time, too, I think I love Kickstarter. I think it's made a lot of great games that wouldn't have been made. And like to his point, like I think Mighty Number 9 is the Mega Man game that we weren't gonna get, right? So I think there's a lot of great things that it does when it's used. Like, I think a little bit more honestly. I just felt like when Sony's up there kind of going like, hey, give these guys money. Like, I don't know why Sony's endorsing it, but won't give it money themselves.
Well, they are eventually going to contribute money, they say, but it's very confusing because like Adam Boyes, when he was out there from Sony, made it very clear, like, this is not our project. Like, we're not touching this. This is for Shenmue
exclusive
fans.
on
Maybe-
PS4 and PC.
Maybe he's
Is it?
referencing the
Yeah.
development side, like actual.
Well, I'm sure they're giving money, and I mean that's the thing
Right.
is, and just like for the same thing for Iga's game. Like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was not enough money to make that game. Do you know what I mean? And that's once
Yeah.
again where I feel it's dishonest because people are like, oh, they're going to make this game for
Well,
like $3 million. They're not making that
that
game
one
for
they
the
were more
Igarashi
upfront about.
Castlevania Bloodstained, they did come out and say like, this is just, we're not making the game with just this. We're using it to get extra.
Right.
I get it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But I think I think like Shenmue is not going to be. Shenmue wasn't made for $10 million like back in the day.
$45 million.
You know, I mean, like they're going to need more money than that, and you know, certainly technology's come a long way and makes games a lot easier to make now than it was back in the day. But I don't know. I like Kickstarter. I think Kickstarter's great. I just sometimes I get a little worried when these publishers are using it to subsidize their own risk. And they're going to be the ones that make, generally, I think, at the end of the day, I'm willing to bet that they're the ones going to make the most money out of these kind of things and these deals that we're subsidizing for them.
It's the same with like the Amplitude Kickstarter, where like Sony owned the rights to the Amplitude name, but they weren't willing to fund it. So they have to Kickstart and have the fans fund it, but then it's exclusive to that system. It's like, well, what the hell? We paid for this thing. Why should it be exclusive to you guys?
Exactly. I mean, I don't like these approaches that they've taken. When the publisher becomes involved, the publishers either publish it or not be involved.
Or be upfront with how this is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean,
how it's going to unfold as it goes forward.
But I mean, do we think Iga was being upfront when like we don't know who he was working with? And he's like, yeah, we might work with someone. So someone was like, I would do it if you got enough money, but I won't put my name on this thing yet, and I won't stand by it yet. I mean, I don't like the dishonesty of it. I don't like the kind of the in the shadows bit of it. I just don't.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I know a lot of people are like, Andy, you're wrong. I wanted Shenmue. If this is the only way Shenmue can happen, then you're wrong. I don't care who or what happens to make this happen. But I think at the end of the day, the consumers are being abused, is what I think.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, no, I hear you. Well, let's keep on trucking here. We got Mike from Los Angeles here. How do you guys feel about PlayStation View and its new a la carte feature? Considering the fact that people have been wanting something like this for an absurdly long time, do you really think that Sony can ultimately free package subscribers from the stranglehold that heartless cable companies have had over them for years? Love the show, segments, interviews, yada, yada, yada. He wrote yada, yada, yada. Keep it up.
Wow. So I started doing some math, like when I got WWE Network and they announced HBO Now. Is that the one on phone?
Not Go, but Now.
Yeah, where it was like, okay, $10 for WWE, $15 for HBO Go, and then, you know, however much for Netflix and Hulu. I was like, whoa, it's already starting to get way up there, like for the cable pricing. It'll be interesting to see what those prices are for that a la carte. If it is just going to be like, well, I only watch 10 stations. That's going to be the same price for my cable bill where it was originally.
Yeah.
So it's a little deceiving, I think, at this point of, is that going to be a good thing or not?
It's awesome they're going forward with it. You just don't know how it's actually going to work. Like, it's not launching until next month, and like it's only launching in Chicago, LA, New York City, Philly, and San Francisco. And the only a la carte channels that you can get are Machinima, Showtime, and the Fox Soccer channels.
Yeah, Mike, who wrote in, you're from LA. Why don't you get your hands on View and write back in and let us know what you think?
Well, I mean, to be fair, I mean, there are right now, like on Apple TV, you can do a number of things. Like they all have their own kind of like Now Go apps, like currently. I mean, so like this is already a path that's being blazed carefully.
Xbox One has it too.
By all these companies, right? So I don't know that Sony's like, I mean, they got cheers for that, but I don't know that they're the one that's breaking the ground, right? I don't know that I believe that, but there are people trying to figure that out. Certainly, a la carte, as Reiner points out, has proven to be a little more expensive than cable is currently.
Sure.
I think what we all think in our head is that like I only watch like these 5 channels. If I only bought those 5 channels, maybe my bill goes down, and then more money goes to the people that I'm trying to support, and they can do better content, right? Like, so there is like kind of hope at the end of that tunnel. We just need more people to kind of break from that subscription thing. And I don't know that Sony's the one that's deciding that. I think Sony's going to grab them as soon as they become available. But the brave move is by the company that says, you know, I'm done with you, DirecTV, Comcast, you know, Dish. I'm doing it my own way. Right. That's the breakout that's got to happen from a lot of companies. In particular, I think as a sports fan, until ESPN and like Fox Sports go individual with that stuff, or even like if I could just get the NFL and actually get local NFL things, or get local sports from any of those NHL, all of them, you can't watch. It's great if you're like Reiner's a Cubs fan. He can watch all the Cubs games. As a Twins fan, I can't watch any Twins games on it because you have to watch the local feed. So there's a lot of...
Why is that? How
it's
are they
the
not
worst
smart
thing.
enough to do that?
Yeah, it is the worst thing.
That's just the way it works right now. I mean, it's just there's a legacy of the system that's in place that's making things difficult. But, you know, one of these days, you know, probably the NFL is going to be like, I don't care. This is what we're doing.
Well, you even saw Disney in their last earnings call. They're like, you know, we can give our content directly to customers, and everybody kind of swallowed hard like, Avenger, Marvel, all the Disney stuff, Star Wars, like
ESPN.
They could take all that off. Netflix, all those places have their own portal for it, charge like an insane amount of money, and people are going to buy it. Parents are going to buy it, and they're just going to dominate.
Pretty powerful. Yes.
So, yeah, it could shake things up in the next 5 years.
Brave new world. All right, Barbara from Kansas City. In a recent interview with IGN, Reggie Fils-Aimé said that Nintendo's strategy with E3's to show games that are only coming out holiday season of that year or the first part of the next year. Their theory is that fans would get frustrated with them otherwise. I'm curious what you think about the strategy of immediacy over long-range planning. Agree, disagree? Barbara.
I mean, Fallout kind of took a similar approach. Where they're announcing late and then they're shipping this holiday.
It seems like it's getting, announced to release is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And
right.
You look at like one of the best examples I feel like, and I know it's different because this is like a DLC thing, but like when Blood Dragon was announced, that was like 1 month turnaround from like April Fool's joke. No, it's real.
Right.
Now it's out practically. And like that tight turnaround made it so that it stayed relevant. It stayed on people's minds for so long. And I think we're just seeing even bigger projects get like, trimmer and trimmer.
Compared to like Ueda's interview that Kato did, talking about Last Guardian, where he mentions like, I'm just amazed that people still have enthusiasm. Like I hope that the enthusiasm has sustained for 8 years or whatever. It's a tough thing to stay alive. But Andy, I'm curious on your take on this in particular.
I mean, every game's different. I mean, I think that's something that is you have to look at each individual title and like where it is. I mean, I think if this was like an unknown title, I mean, it's really easy for Bethesda to do it with Fallout 4.
Sure.
Right? Like, I mean, that's an easy call. Like when you're a new IP, that's a different challenge. When you're a digital only game, that's like kind of an expansion. I mean, these are all different cases. So I think it's a case to case. You have to take it on and look at it individually. But then for Nintendo, I mean, I get why Nintendo says that, but also it's like to me it's somewhat a smokescreen for Nintendo to not give fans more hope. Do you know what I mean? And I think like I think you walk away and you go like, how much longer are they going to support the Wii U? No Zelda there this year. I mean, right. I think that's concerning about the lifespan of the Wii U to any fan, right? Especially because they've already announced another platform. And I think it's really easy for the head of marketing who knows how to say things in a clever way, right? To say, hey, we're just trying to make sure we focus on things that come out this year so we don't upset
Live
the
in
fans.
the now, man. Don't worry about Zelda. You want to make Mario levels and play Star Fox again.
I mean, it's a fair statement by him, but I mean, I do think at the end of the day, like, no one's going to be mad at Nintendo because they showed us like 15 games we really want that are all in development and we're like super excited and they're like, it's going to be 5 years. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And no one's going to be mad at Nintendo.
Right.
For
Yeah.
that.
Right.
Obviously, you don't want to lose money marketing a game. You get a big marketing campaign set up and then it slips, a year or whatever. But at the same time, there's something about showing more of your hand if you have a pretty light lineup like this year's Wii U did, where I felt like it was kind of a death march a little bit, where it was like Star Fox, weird Animal Crossing, party board game.
Yeah, just Mario Party.
It's kind of like, where's Zelda? Are you doing what I think you're doing with Zelda and moving it off to another system?
They say they're not, but
yeah, I know, but it's
are.
like, well, then show me the game. You showed it on the Video Game Awards on a little screen. Give me a look at that on a big screen. That's fine. You don't have to show me new footage. Just let me see it.
It's very clear that next Nintendo's E3 is the one that people should be looking forward to. It seems like that's what they've pretty much set up here. Like,
they always announce in Japan first, right? I think.
Well, Nintendo Directs.
Yeah. So what do you think next year it's going to be big Zelda blowout and then more of teasing the NX,
and also mobile stuff. I assume we'll have some.
That'd be weird to see at E3.
Some
but
presence?
maybe.
I don't know. We'll see.
I mean, the only time I think that like announcing things too far down the line is if they had, another Zelda game that was coming out. You know what I mean? Like I always laugh at Electronic Arts and they're like, "Hey, really play Dragon Age 2 and here's Mass Effect 3." Or whatever. You're like, "Whoa, Mass Effect!" Like when they, like when there's something else is like sparklier. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like that you can change directions. You don't have to do that, but I mean, they could have told us more.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so Thane writes in the same light that critics have artificially created a superhero fatigue in cinema, is there going to be a similar opinion on the open world genre?
Nope.
From October 2014 through the end of 2015, we'll have Far Cry 4, Shadow of Mordor, Dragon Age, Witcher, Batman, Metal Gear, and Fallout. Is it a criticism that might start trending in the community? And then Thane also says that he really liked our Uncharted script reading of that
couple
weird
weeks ago.
scene. So thanks, Thane.
It was a weird
Our
thing.
open world games, are we going to get burnt out on those, I guess?
It just seems like super expensive way of the future. Like I remember talking to the Witcher 3 team on that cover story trip about making the jump to open world from Witcher 2. And the way they explained it is like, yeah, it's just the way of the future. Everybody likes open world games. We got to do it. And I think a lot of studios are going to have a big learning curve trying to tackle that project.
Yeah, I think over 50% of the top 10 games from last year were open world.
Yeah.
And I think it's really weird to say I just don't understand the comic book movies. Are we burnt out on them? Which obviously we're not. They're still selling like mad, and people are going in droves. But more along the lines of this is a way a game is presented. It isn't a game. You know what I mean? You could have a lot of variety and all be open worlds. You know what I mean? It's just kind of the way the game is designed.
No Man's Sky versus Ghost Recon Wildlands.
Yeah, exactly. They're not anything close to the same thing.
Sure.
I had an interesting conversation with Rami from Vlambeer about AAA games, and he's mentioning that it just seems like all AAA games are just being built so that they don't end. They're just huge open world games that just are built so that if you get to the ending, there's still 100 hours more stuff you can do.
If you want to see the real ending.
Yeah,
so it's
they don't give you credit.
Exactly.
Just keep playing, please.
And it's just redefining what people expect from any AAA game, which Ben was saying is it's a real tall order. I don't know how sustainable it is for all AAA developers to be focusing on open world games, or at least trending towards all working on open world games. And also, I don't want them all to be open world games. I love them, but man, that's a lot of time.
I mean, the Last of Us is not The Last of Us if it's an open world game.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And we obviously adored that here. I mean, there's games, and I think we would argue here, just to go back to the beginning of the first segment, I think the best Batman game was the linear one.
Oh, interesting.
I agree.
Nope.
So far, I haven't played Arkham Knight yet, though, so we'll see. All right. How much time we have?
We got maybe 2 more.
2 more? Okay. So we have, this is Ryan from Utah. Hi, GI crew. My question is twofold. First, from what you saw at E3, be it a new game, hardware, or whatever, what do you think has the greatest potential to disappoint because the hype is simply too high to be satisfied, even though the end result might be pretty good? That's Ryan.
It's a cliche answer at this point, but I think people are expecting too much of No Man's Sky. I think what they've shown, I don't think the team is lying in any way. I just think people's imaginations are running a little bit too wild. But if you take it at face value, what they've shown, that is a game experience. And there's going to be a lot more downtime, and the novelty of having this infinite world will wear off after a couple hours, I think. And so brace yourself. You're not going to be living in that world and having a fully functional society,
Well, yeah.
I'm going to say Star Wars Battlefront.
Oh.
In that it isn't what you think it is at this point. In that it doesn't play quite like Battlefield. It doesn't quite play like Battlefront.
What is it?
It's something a little different, the way they spawn vehicles and stuff like that. And it's more of a luck system. It's more like you're playing a slot machine on the field.
By the way, I did some follow up on that a little bit. I don't know what I can say on or off the record, but that would be one game mode that was shown. How about that?
But that's
for
the
an
big
answer?
what is it? Walker Assault mode that they showed, the 40-player one.
But I think there's going to be other modes that may
that'd be great.
That may become more played than perhaps Assault Walker mode.
They shouldn't have showed that.
What do you? Can you just explain what you're talking about?
So I go into a hangar really quick. I go into a hangar on Hoth. I'm playing the Rebel Alliance. I'm looking for a snowspeeder because we got these big ass walkers barreling down on us, and they're gonna blow up our base. And it's like, stop them. And you're like, okay, I need a snowspeeder. I've seen the movie like a billion times. I know how to do this.
Sure,
let's do it. I go in the hangar, and it's just like, there's a lot of snow speeders in here, but they're all props. It's like background props. And it's just like, well, that looks cool, but there's no vehicle I can use here. So I'm running around looking for vehicles. They're like, the shields are down on the AT-ATs, take them down. And so everybody's shooting with their laser guns up at these AT-ATs. And you're like,
that's not going to work.
This isn't doing it. So
yeah.
I'm just running around how the hell do we do anything? Where do you get vehicles? And I see a snowspeeder go overhead. I'm like, okay, I'll go back here. Someone got one back here, and I go
feel
back there.
That's the Battlefront experience. That's why I remember playing it.
I'm standing in the back, and there's nothing spawning, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'll just keep going, playing the game. So I'm just shooting snowtroopers left and right.
Wampus.
And then all of a sudden I see this little Rebel insignia kind of spinning on this kind of transparent
power-ups floating around in the world.
Yeah, it's a little icon. So I go run over and get it, and it gives me a shield generator. I was like, oh, okay, that's a power-up. I use it to protect us or whatever. And then the next one I get is a rocket launcher. And then the next one I get, my guy's just sitting there, and it's like, you got a snowspeeder. My guy disappears, and all of a sudden I'm in the air in the snowspeeder. I was like, oh my God. So that's how they spawn.
That's bizarre. The beauty is running up to the ship, jumping in, and then immediately taking off. Right?
So the way I played the game was, I was like, instead of concentrating on the battle, it's like, I need a big weapon to take these things down. And to do that, I'm playing this game of luck, of picking up an icon and it's like, what did I get? Shield generator. Nope. Go find another one.
Right.
X-Wing. Okay, let's do this. So that's how it kind of
It's a little
played
more
out.
Mario Party than people expect.
Yeah, I think the idea there is that they're trying to make it so that you don't just log in the game and like you stink at first-person shooters and like there's a guy sitting across the map with a sniper rifle just shooting everyone as they like zone in. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. I think they want it to be like that the greatest players can't just get a snow speeder and fly around and destroy everyone in every match. I think they're trying to create some variety so you can kind of do some different things. I think to Reiner's point, I agree with him.
It's really dumb.
I did not enjoy it either.
Really?
I mean, I enjoyed it. Like all the Star Wars wrappings are amazing, right?
Right.
The the Williams track is going. You're just like, I'm in. The graphics are great. Laser sounds, all in.
I feel like I'm there.
But the gameplay definitely right now, at least in the mode they showed, right? You got to remember they only showed 2 modes, and there's obviously more than 2 modes in this game, right? Because we played co-op and we played this. We played kind of a co-op horde mode, basically.
Okay.
So there's more to come, but I think they're just they're thinking this game's going to sell to a lot of people that don't normally play Battlefield, to a lot of people that don't normally play, first-person shooters. But to your point, I think it's a mistake. I mean, I think some of the bigger games right now, they're people like games that are challenging.
It
People
worked
like
well in
games that are
Battlefront. It worked well in Battlefield. You had the blueprint.
Right.
And Bert's had a different experience. He was on the Imperial side where they are just pushing the front. So he's just like, yeah, we're in these big vehicles just blowing the crap out of you
So
guys.
it's kind
That
of
was
like
super
rush
fun.
mode. You're just kind of like,
Well, yeah, the rebels are just like, we're screwed.
right.
That's what it felt like to me. I mean, I'd be in a firefight with a guy, and all of a sudden I'd be like, I'm dead. An AT-AT shot me from the, you know what I mean? Like,
Of course.
Wait, I got to really work on my skills. I'm not making sure that I get destroyed by the AT-ATs. I'm like fighting this guy, like there's a lot of troops on the ground. I mean, it is a big war. There is a lot going on.
And I
It
hope
is
you're
crazy.
right. Like, I think it looks great. The visuals are stunning, and
Sure.
it does like kind of deliver that Star Wars experience more than we've seen in a game where there's guys everywhere. But man, they got to figure out that vehicles are a big part of it, and some people might just want a rocket launcher. They don't want to be warped up into a snow speeder.
Yeah.
Wow. So Reiner, Battlefront, Andy, is anything jump out to you?
What was the question again?
About like
Make
things
fun
that
of Star
biggest,
Wars?
What do you think is not going to live up to the hype, basically?
What's
Like,
that gonna live to the hype?
even if it's still good, it's just the hype levels are too high.
Yeah, Star Wars is through the roof. By the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I felt like there were a lot of great games this year. I mean, I'm pretty positive on a lot of it. I mean, I think the one for me, I think just to our previous conversation is I think the PlayStation 4 wasn't really designed in my mind, and I could be wrong. I'm sure Mark Cerny or Sony can tell me otherwise. With Morpheus entirely in mind.
Sure.
And I think Morpheus is going to be cool. I just think it's not going to be amazing because I think it's older technology. I mean, it took a long time ago to make the PlayStation 4, and the PlayStation 4 is amazing, by the way. I think the PlayStation 4 is amazing. But selling peripherals, getting peripheral support, getting games in place, I just don't think it's a wise move for Sony, and I think that gamers will like it, but I don't think it's going to be ultimately the experience they want, and I don't think Sony can put the resources into it to make the experience that people want.
Wait till PS5, you're saying, maybe?
Yeah, PS5. I mean, I think the next round of stuff, or if you're a PC player, like I said, there's a lot of innovation that needs to happen over the next 3 to 4 years, and like, let that happen on PC. PC's always been the innovator as far as that stuff goes. There's nothing wrong with continuing to make great console games that people want to play on console, because console's an amazing experience and delivers great console experiences. I think sticking to that is at least would be my strategy. So Morpheus maybe is my choice for like, it looks cool, but maybe the sparkle's not as great as
Everyone needs to
as
cool
this
it.
one. Yeah, well, real quick, I don't think there'll be a lot of debate here, but the more we've learned about the Final Fantasy VII remake after the fact, and the fact that they aren't going to be beholden to everything from the game, and that they're going to kind of revamp the gameplay of it. Who knows what that's going to be? Is going to be like, more like Final Fantasy 15 or 13, or will it still be turn-based and stuff? And they're trying to make
Joe
it
was
more
talking about it. Like, there's no way it's going to be turn-based.
right, and they're trying to make it more grounded. All I wanted was a prettier version of the same kind of turn-based gameplay, Final Fantasy VII. I think that's what a lot of people want. So I think people aren't going to get exactly what they're thinking.
It's weird that they're having it be Red 13 that gets stabbed through the back instead of Eris.
It's
That
a
was
bold move.
swap.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
weird.
He licks his fingers and puts out his little flame tail.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right, so the last one here is from Jameson in Georgia. He asks, what was your favorite moment in your history with E3? Thanks. Keep kicking ass, Jameson.
Just for a baseline here, how many E3s have each of you been to now?
All of them.
You've both been to every single
19?
one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, and Reiner went to a couple maybe just one
One
CS for
CES,
one
yeah,
CS for
one
Reiner.
CES.
Yeah, ahead of time. Yeah, we've gone to a lot of E3s, and they all kind of go together. Over time.
I'm gonna pick one that I was actually with you. I was gonna say Star Fox, playing Miyamoto and Star Fox. So I'm gonna go with when Zelda Ocarina of Time was announced at the Nintendo press conference, and that was where there was, like, to go back to that first question, journalist fanboys crying and losing their freaking minds. And Andy and I are just sitting there like, what is happening?
Yeah.
This is nuts.
It was really weird. Yeah,
But
it
I
was
mean,
really
they were
weird.
just going crazy. It was like a Beatles concert, just like, settle down.
Because you always hear about the Twilight Princess reveal, and like people were crying and stuff. But even Ocarina of Time, like that was,
yeah, Ocarina of Time, they were going crazy.
yeah, it was crazy. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, just like people losing their mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like even seeing the grass, just that pan across the grass, and it's just weird looking, crappy grass, and you're like, and you hear the music, and people are just like, whoa, I'm dying. This is the best thing. Can't believe it's happening.
I'm trying to think of like the biggest reaction in the 5 years that I've been going to E3, and I think it was probably like the PS4 announcement when they talked about the no used games thing, or that they will allow used games.
That was
the crowd
funny.
lost their mind with that,
Yeah.
but that was even a bigger reaction than that. You think?
Oh yeah, and it was a smaller venue too, so you're not in like this huge arena, sports arena for the reveal. It was
Right.
and there was a few thousand people in there, maybe a couple thousand, but it was just everyone around us for whatever reason was just going crazy.
To be fair, it was Ocarina of Time. You got
I
to
know,
go crazy.
but I
a little
mean,
bit.
it's like
That game turned out pretty good.
yeah,
it was just like, I guess we should have expected it. It's
Yeah,
Nintendo,
yeah.
right, guys? Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just think back to like all the like. For me, it's more like my memories of E3 are just through the old days when in the '90s, teams of 14 would make a game that would sell 30 million copies. So there was a lot of money in the video game industry, and they spent ridiculous amounts of money on I mean, you'd walk in and be like, "This is a party for 10,000 of their closest friends with." Like major rock acts and free booze. This is just stupid. You know what I mean? Like it's just it was just kind of unbelievable that like the level of like we are just going to spend this like Crash Bandicoot money like crazy, and
It's like a notch type thing.
yeah,
going
like
on
not
there.
well, he threw a party this year, at E3. So it was crazy to kind of see that. I mean, that's certainly I'm sad to see it's gone. It's good that it's probably gone overall, but it definitely is something that like there'll never be another show where you're just like you walk in there like, oh yeah, and like the Foo Fighters are playing here at this party tonight. You're like, what?
I mean, was it maybe 6-7 years ago where the Who was playing at that rock band party? That was pretty good.
I know, it's like it's kind of crazy, like some of the things that I've gotten to do at E3. But at the same time too, there's lots of dumb stuff. I remember we were at a party once where like Bruce Willis was there, and like his like entourage cut off the bathrooms, and they wouldn't let anybody get close to Bruce Willis as he was dancing to this like horrible band. And so
Wait,
Poe.
in the
It was
bathroom?
Poe.
It was
the
Poe.
band was Poe. Yeah.
the band was Poe, but he was standing near like the hallway to the restroom.
So he had these security guards around him. We're just like, we gotta go potty, man.
And
Bruce
they're like,
Willis's
stay away from Bruce Willis. We're like, I don't care about Bruce Willis.
You see,
I need to get to the restroom.
It sounds too much like you talk about, Bruce Willis's like suited security guards taking over a bathroom. It's it sounds more Hans Gruber than John McClane.
yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's all those kind of like weird moments. I was there when Michael Jackson was playing Tekken at the
What?
like Sony party.
What?
Yeah, like millions of years ago. I mean,
Was he a big Tekken guy?
and that was like Huey Lewis and the
Amazing,
News
yeah.
was the band at that show, and it
Hell
was like,
yes.
oh yeah, there's.
So you watch Michael Jackson play Tekken to the beat of
Now
Want
he
a
just
New
like
Drug?
they like. I mean, it was like a madhouse. I mean, they like escorted him in for like 1 second of like playing and being like, I love PlayStation or whatever, and then like they shovel. It was on the Sony lot. It was insane.
What a weird deal.
I mean, there's been a lot of weird stuff over
Yeah.
the years that like you just see like that you're just like, okay, that's odd.
Right.
I remember I remember at one E3 I was going up to play a game and I was like, would this kid hurry up and finish? Like he's been sitting here playing this game forever. I want to play it. I can't remember what the game was, and I was like, God, this kid's just annoying. Just get the hell out of here. Oh, it's a kid from Hanson. I should have known that. Like, and it was like, so it's like the Hanson kids, and then like we saw them that night, like at a party, and I think they might have, they were obviously like young kids, and they were like getting crazy at this party, let's say,
We were talking, like a big group of us talking, and all of a sudden there'd just be like in the circle, like a Hanson kid, and it's like, watch your language, guys. There's a Hanson kid here now.
The Hanson boy in the house.
and not our Hanson, by the way.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I wish.
So yeah, I mean,
You're the fourth.
There's
or
been
fifth.
We could probably write a book of weirdness. For
Please do.
Probably
Yeah.
should,
Please
actually.
do. Special
Over the
edition
years.
Game Informer. I would really love to read
There's
that.
been a
That'd be
lot of
great.
weird stuff over the years.
It doesn't compare, but this year I had a super weird experience where I was in the booth because they have like a little booth for writing off to the side, and I was in there with Bertz and Mike Futter, and then the door opens and it's this PR guy that Bertz knows, and he just like pokes his head and he's like, "Hey, sorry to bother you guys. Is it cool if like Tony Hawk just chills in here for a little bit because he needs some place to relax?" We're like, yeah, sure. And then Tony Hawk just walks in. We say hello, and then he just sits down across from us as we're editing videos and writing and stuff. And then Tony Hawk's sitting across from me for 25 minutes checking his phone. And the entire time I'm just glancing up like, how do we take advantage of this opportunity? It's Tony Hawk. Oh, my God. And then like everyone would poke their head in.
I was like, hey,
Reiner
guys.
walks in.
Hi, guys.
And just...
Oh, we hired Tony Hawk again.
It was the best because you can see their faces and they're like scanning through. I'm like, hey guys, how's it going? Then as they look over, who's this old guy? Oh, it's Mr. Tony Hawk. Okay, yeah, surreal.
It was weird.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I don't know. This E3 might have been my favorite as far as just like Sony's press conference might have been like one of those most incredible moments I've ever witnessed.
Yeah.
On a personal note, like being able to interview Miyamoto, I think was
sure.
like my first E3 for Game Informer was like fantastic.
Was it your second? It was the one I was there?
Maybe it was the second one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were there taking pictures and stuff like that.
So many pictures.
Obviously not the same as playing Star Fox with Mr. Miyamoto like Reiner, but it was still awesome. Like just trying to I went in there and was like, can I make him laugh? And like he's probably laughing all the time, so it's probably not that big of an accomplishment, but it was a fun interview. So
I interviewed Miyamoto with Mike Futter this year, and I reminded him of the tournament we were in, and when I was shooting him constantly in
Nice.
Star Fox. And it was
Reiner
like,
pushed
he's
him
like,
down and got in his face. He was like, oh God. He was like turned into a WWE.
Learn to play
Like,
Star Fox 64, dude.
wait, how many years ago would that have been?
a long time. He remembered though, like he was speaking Japanese, and he was like,
Asshole.
out of here, you know,
Yeah,
like no, he was like, he was talking about how the R wings we were in would like raise up to the movie screen we were playing on.
No.
That sounds pretty good.
it was pretty cool. Yeah,
Nice.
Well, who was the question of the week, you think?
I think I want to give it to the games and their potential to disappoint.
You know
I
what?
hate to go with the bummer
No,
route.
no.
but-
I thought about that too. Ryan's was my favorite too. Not because it's cynical,
Yeah.
but because like there's so much hype flying around at E3 that it's good to check some of that sometimes.
sure,
So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Give
like
it to the hate.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's those are our emails for the week. So send your emails to podcast@gameinformer.com. We'll send you a nice little prize if you are question of the week. We don't want to overpromise on that, but
It's Tim Turi's fingernails.
It's a little something.
Actually.
Just clipped them this morning.
Perfect.
But yeah, so I guess stick around for the
Stick around for
the
Dave
interview.
Grossman if you're a fan of adventure games, or even if you're not. I mean, he has some good stories about working on Skywalker Ranch for so many years and eating lunch with George Lucas and the change of Telltale throughout his 9 years there and stuff. So definitely stick around for that. And welcome back to the Game Informer Show. We are honored in this segment to be joined by the great Dave Grossman of adventure game fame in general. So, Dave, thanks for swinging by, man.
Thanks a lot. Nice intro.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
So, you want to just talk about the early days of you working with LucasArts? What that was actually like?
Sure. Well, that was actually pretty fabulous. I mean, I was kind of straight out of graduate school, so I didn't really have any context for what the working world was supposed to be like. But I went in for this interview with this film company that was deciding to make games, and it seemed like that might be kind of cool. And you kind of drive onto the lot, and it's like you're on this you're in this sort of hillside wonderland, and you drive around behind some fabulous buildings, and there's this little the stable house is what it was called that we worked in, and everything on the ranch was kind of designed with a fantasy in mind. So this was supposed to be a converted stable house, even though it never had been one. They had just built it to look like that.
Huh.
Okay.
And I went in and I wasn't a very good interviewer, I think, at the time. And I sat around the table with all these kind of limited with David Fox and Ron Gilbert and Noah Falstein were all in there. And I think I kind of muffed that interview because everybody kind of got up in the middle. Ron was first. He got up and was like, well, I got something else to do, he took off, I'll see you. And most of the other people kind of followed suit. And I was like, oh my God, I've totally blown it. This seemed like such a cool job. And, got off I went. And so I kind of apologized on my way out and just kind of reiterated, like, I really would love to do this. I don't know how I came off, but I would love to be in. And for some reason, they hired me, and so that was kind of my first industry job. I spent 5 years there. We were on the ranch for like about the first year of that, working on The Secret of Monkey Island, and it was one of these situations where you just want to go to work, right? Because you're in a fabulous environment, and it's pastoral, and there's a bunch of weird creative people around you, and you're all having a good time. And back home, I had this tiny little apartment. It was kind of cheesy. They weren't paying me very much, so I was kind of living in downtown Berkeley in a little postage stamp size thing.
So did you roll out a sleeping bag underneath Darth Vader over at Skywalker Ranch then and just camp out there?
Well, I didn't ever sleep there, but I would on occasion be there till 2-3 in the morning.
Sure.
And the food was kind of partially subsidized. They had a kitchen in the main house with a world-class chef, and lunch was about $5, and you could take pretty much all you wanted. So I would take enough for dinner too, and I would just kind of squirrel it away in my desk and stay through dinner. And just being there was a lot nicer than being at home.
So what year is this? Can you just describe the lay of the land for Skywalker Ranch? What all was happening at that time on that property?
This was 1989.
Okay.
So it was kind of God, what else was going on there? I mean, I was sort of insulated. You didn't get to see a whole heck of a lot of what was going on with the movie business.
Sure.
It was before Jurassic Park, because I distinctly remember the meetings for that where Spielberg came in. We were that would have been about a year and a half later, I think, early 90s. We were talking to him about The Dig, which was kind of his idea to begin with.
Right.
And he left that meeting to go and meet with the model makers, not the computer guys, but the people making actual physical models. And he came back in about 15 minutes and was like, "Can you set me up with a flight sim?" He loved flight sims. And that was the point at which I know, this model thing, I don't know if it's going that well. And meanwhile, there was a guy, Steve Williams, down at ILM was building that awesome Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yeah.
And that was, they just took the entire movie digital direction from that point. So that was my tiny little window into that happening, was seeing Spielberg that one time.
Nice. How involved were you with The Dig?
Peripherally. I mean, there was an early version under Noah Falstein that was kind of between the two Monkey Islands. We were starting to work on it. Okay. And so I was the programming lead and assistant designer guy on that one. And we didn't really get very far before there started to be some actual market pressures on the group. Like, hey, you could turn a profit, and that would actually be kind of a nice thing, because mostly we were just losing money there. And so they assessed all the projects in terms of their sort of, where were they, how solid did they seem, how confident were we that they were going to come out. And that one was a little bit weird and experimental, and we were working on, six-legged creature designs and trying to figure out walks from and some different kinds of gameplay. Right. And so we put that one on the shelf, and I just went over and worked with the people making Monkey 2 until that was done. And the Dig stayed on the shelf for several years. And then after Day of the Tentacle, they had me take it on. And I worked on it for about a month, and I just realized I am not right for this, or it's not right for me. Oh, I forgot. In the middle, Brian Moriarty took it on. Oh, okay. And started it again. So there was a whole kind of a rev going on while we were making Day of the Tentacle. Moriarty was making version 2 of The Dig, which is pretty similar to what eventually came out. But then he left the company kind of once he got it to beta. And they said, we need somebody to take this and finish it, and it's got all these problems, and here you take it and assess it and deal with the team and so on.
Do you think what kept that project alive was just the Spielberg attachment? It's kind of like the Golden Glove?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, I mean, everybody was like, but we can have Steven Spielberg's name on the box. That's how great is that? Right. We'll make a mint.
Probably a similar thing to like the LMNO project that Spielberg worked on later with EA, where it was in development hell for so long, but it's like, but that name Spielberg, it can't fail.
It worked for Boom Blocks.
That game's great.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So Sean Clark took it on after me. Like I said, after about a month, I just said, you guys should take me off of this because I'm going to screw it up.
Sure.
Give it to someone else. And Sean, God bless him, finished it and got it out.
So on the Skywalker Ranch in those days, does George Lucas have an office there? Does he have a hammock? How often are you interacting with him?
He does. He's I mean, he's got some mysterious office kind of upstairs in the main house, which is sort of a separate building around a hill from where we were.
Okay.
And I didn't see him all that many times while we were there. Usually, where you would see him was in the lunchroom. He would just come in and get stuff. And there was kind of a running joke of me being like the last person in our little group of people who all got hired at the same time to see him, because we'd be eating, and suddenly they'd say, "So did you catch him?" And I'd be like, "What?" And he'd been behind me or something.
Yeah.
I just want to see him one time. But then eventually, once I started leading projects, he would come around about once a year and look at what you were doing. He was not hands-on with any of the game stuff, except for there was a learning division that he cared about. So he would go and kind of poke into what those people were doing. But with things like the adventure games, he would just sort of come around, and maybe he would bring his daughter with him and have her play things and kind of check them out and go, "Yeah, okay." He wouldn't say much, and then he would leave, and was just kind of, I guess, checking in to make sure we were actually doing something.
Do you think people were scared of him, or was he kind of seen as just an eccentric billionaire at that time, or what was the general attitude towards him?
I think people probably were, some people, a little scared of him just because he's the boss.
Right.
He has a certain gravitas for that, but he's like a real shy, soft-spoken kind of guy, so I don't know why anybody would actually be afraid of him.
Right. So one of the interesting things about this period that I've read about is just the idea that you guys weren't allowed to work on licensed games. Is that right? Because some other, was it like Atari or somebody else owned the license to like Star Wars and Indiana Jones?
We weren't allowed to work on Star Wars properties specifically, because they could make lots more money just licensing them to someone else, with more sort of clout in the games business.
Did you guys take that personally?
No. Well, I was 12 when Star Wars came out, so I was like the perfect audience for it. But I didn't go into that job with like, all right, I'm going to work on Star Wars games. I liked working on original stuff, so I kind of thought of that as an advantage, because it meant we were really free to do whatever we wanted as long as it was fun and good. And I might have felt pretty restricted just working on Star Wars all the time.
Yeah, definitely. It kind of fueled.
Now I'd like to do it, but
oh, sure. Yeah. But I feel like it kind of fueled this whole generation from you guys of incredibly creative stuff, like Monkey Island, Maniac Mansion, Day of the Tentacle, all that stuff wouldn't have been around if you had the golden ticket of Star Wars always there.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah,
and a lot less of that, certainly.
Sure. So you want to just talk about maybe how you guys started working on Day of the Tentacle originally?
Well, that was it was on the heels of Monkey Island 2, and we had been, Tim and I, kind of apprentices up till this point, kind of learning the game design craft, and we got to weigh in on puzzles, but someone else always made the final decisions on stuff, and it was just kind of time, like, all right, it's time for you guys to lead your own project, and they decided that they would leave us stuck together, I think, to minimize the risk. Let's just do one crazy project, okay? And they suggested, actually, like, how would you guys feel about doing a sequel to Maniac Mansion? And we were like, that sounds good. We liked it. We would love to do a sequel. And because it had been 5 years since the original one had come out, like, art styles had changed a lot and computers were much more powerful, so there was no expectation of you're going to hew to kind of the original visual style of the game or anything. It was kind of like, it'll be a sequel, and you should use the characters and stuff, but
sure.
Go crazy, do what you want, so we decided to make this crazy kind of living Warner Brothers cartoon, and we're off and running, and Ron was still around at that point. He was getting ready to leave and go start Humongous and make kids games, but he was still in the building for a while, and so we got him and Gary Winnick, who was the other instigator of the original Maniac Mansion, to sit with us while we were kind of generating story ideas and stuff, and I think it was Ron who had said, I always wanted to make a game about time travel, and we were like, yeah, that sounds great, let's do that.
Oh.
So we all spent a bunch of time just thinking about what would be interesting time periods to visit and what could we do there, and brainstorming kind of lots and lots of weird things moving through time or staying in a place for long periods of time kinds of puzzles, like it's turning the wine into vinegar and stuff like that.
Right.
And eventually it just kind of dropped out. Like there were the colonial period seemed really good, and the future one seemed really good. We had lots of ideas for those and for stuff to do in the present, and other time periods we had less ideas for. So we just kind of settled on those three.
That's what's amazing to me is, I mean, even today, there's so few games set in colonial America. Like, I remember we went on like the Assassin's Creed 3 cover story trip, and it's like, all right, other colonial America games. There's probably some strategy nonsense on PC, and then we have Day of the Tentacle, and that's about it.
Yeah. You name it.
We just assumed that everyone on the planet knows something about American history enough to kind of give context for that stuff.
Right.
I don't know how true that actually was.
Right.
I've played the game since then. I always think of it as, oh my god, it was so cohesive and it made sense and all the puzzles were really well telegraphed and we give you lots of hints to how to do stuff. But playing it again years later, it's like, wow, this game's hard. How did I expect people to solve this puzzle? And man, this thing about washing the carriage to make it rain, like that's something that my dad taught me, was sort of folk wisdom of, oh, you wash your car and it makes it rain. I assumed that everybody on the planet understood that, but apparently this is not common wisdom. So
yeah, it's interesting, especially with the remake that Double Fine announced at PSX earlier this year, that they're going to be kind of remastering the game. Is that what prompted you to go back and play it again?
Yeah.
Okay.
I wonder, maybe they could change the puzzle. No, that would be sacrilege.
You should probably change the puzzles. It must be really, really tough. Like I just experienced that with Grim Fandango, playing it again since high school is the last time I played it. It's like, man, everything holds up so well, but couldn't they have done some focus testing on this puzzles? Like I know focus testing is a terrible bad word, but was there any sort of testing with the public at all back then?
No, not with the public, but we would always do what you call the pizza orgy, where we would get people's families and friends and stuff, and they would come in when the game was sort of at alpha stage, and we would sit them down and feed them pizza and sodas. This may have helped fuel the way that those games came out, and just watch them play and see partly are they laughing at the right spots, and are the jokes coming across, take lots of notes, can we fix this, can we fix that. But the other thing was kind of testing the puzzles, and are they getting stuck, and where are they getting stuck. And that's something that I actually still do is get some people that I either know or that people I know and sit them down and just watch them play the game as soon as it becomes playable.
Yeah.
Because no matter how good you may think you are at empathizing with the audience and sort of predicting how they're going to react, you always miss something.
Yeah, definitely.
I think part of it comes from I feel like when I talk to people who have gone back to classic adventure games that never played them when they first came out, like Grim Fandango or something like that, or Secret of Monkey Island, that they're playing them like by themselves now. They just download it on a whim, try it out.
Right.
Whereas like my memories, especially you talk about the pizza orgy thing, which is like just having a friend, getting a new adventure game was an event, and you'd have two minds throwing your ideas at it.
Or like a pizza threesome, like just a small group of friends.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, keep more intimate, sure. So, that always made it a little easier. The more people you had guessing at something.
Yeah, I had that experience with the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy text adventure.
I love that game. Yes,
that one. Like that was one I was playing with a high school buddy of mine over at his house because he had some kind of computer or other, and we were just gradually grinding our way through that the puzzle with the Babelfish. Like,
oh my
god! Beginning that just kind of goes on and on and on and on, and we got stuck at what turned out to be, I think, the very, very last step of it, and we just pounded our heads against it for like an hour, and the time we were like, all right, I don't know what's gonna. Let's just hang it up. We'll come back to this later. So I'm walking on my way home from his house, and it comes to me, whatever the solution was to the puzzle. I was like, oh my god, that's absolutely it. So I ran the rest of the way, and I got on the phone. I'm like, Mike, try this. This is gonna work.
Yeah.
And he did it, and he was like, oh my god, it's working. So
yeah, something about like launching it into your ear from across the room or something weird like that. I think
it was some kind of crazy.
I love it too that it's a text adventure, so he can just read the solution to you, and you don't feel like or like what the response was.
Oh, over the phone.
Yeah, and you just don't really miss anything. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
fantastic.
Right. Then Arthur walked out of the room. Oh, cool. That sounds great. That was a game that I was stuck on all the time as a kid. And then in high school, I got really into it and then looked up a walkthrough. And like using a walkthrough for a text adventure is just the most depressing thing possible. Just, all right, tell me exactly what to type.
Copy paste.
Maybe get some joke ones in there as
Right.
like little detours along the way, stuff like that. All right, this is
That was definitely a time when it was okay in fact, better for games to be really hard in terms of what their puzzles were. I think there's a lot less patience for that these days.
Definitely, just because the audience has grown so much.
Yeah, I mean, the audience at that time was kind of grown-up, serious computer geeks and 13-year-old serious computer geeks, and mostly just people who were really into computers, the only ones who had them at that time. And there's a certain sort of analytical brain that kind of goes along with that kind of person. There was, the entire audience was people who like puzzles a lot.
Yeah.
And now the audience is kind of everybody. Your mother-in-law plays games, but she may not like being stuck thinking about something. I want this to be a more of a soothing, relaxing activity than something that is going to frustrate and agitate me for hours on end.
And that's what's interesting about your career in particular, is because eventually, after working at Humongous for a little while, you went over to Telltale. And you arrived there like 2005, is that right?
That is true, 2005. Yeah.
And then the
company was about a year old, and they were just finishing up the first Bone game at that time.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then you really saw a hell of an evolution of the entire adventure game genre into what is now a bit of a template. And I'm just curious what your...
The template keeps changing, I think, but we spent a bunch of time trying to stick a little bit with kind of the original mechanics of adventure games and this sort of idea that you would get through them by being clever. But in order to alleviate the frustration, we turned all kinds of tricks to kind of help you along as subtly or as overtly as the players wanted. So sometimes it would be hints on demand. We tried that, and we tried getting really subtle with a hint system that would actually like track you as you walked around the game and watch what you were clicking on, try and figure out what you were trying to do, and then it would try and get the characters in the game to help you out if it was looking at its watch and deciding that you had taken too long. So there was actually a pretty serious and eventually would have been sophisticated drama manager running behind the scenes of some of those adventure games.
Can you just describe?
But then,
go ahead.
Then eventually we sort of angled into what The Walking Dead and the things that came after that are, which there's a sacrifice that gets made for those games, which is we're going to make 4 times as much content as you're actually going to see on a playthrough. And that was always kind of a big bar to get over. Like the idea of having a game that didn't stop was not a particularly new one. It was just the idea that we could actually build something like that and get away with it was new.
Yeah, definitely. Can you describe your role at Telltale and maybe how it evolved over your, close to 10 years there?
Well, I came in, I guess my original title was senior designer. I was the guy in the design department who had any experience, really. It was just me and I think there were 2 other people at that time. So I just kind of started running the design group that became official fairly soon after. And on the early titles, I was like on the Sam and Max season, I was actually leading the game itself and trying to lead the design with some other people and lead the writing and to direct the game. And we were making 6 episodes kind of all at the same time. I mean, they were staggered, but there was a lot of overlap. That was kind of crazy. So we started like adding more and more designers to these things. The group would get bigger, and gradually over time, I became a little bit more sort of editorial and supervisory over all of that stuff. Eventually, we split roles between designers and writers and directors, because there's kind of 3 distinct skills that you have to make one of these games, and it was just hard to find kind of auteur people who could really shine at all of those things.
Sure.
So the directors we started pulling out of, we had a cinematic group who were kind of specialists in, this is what you're going to see on screen, and I'm going to monkey around with all the little the dials and wheels of the engine to make it shine. So those people tended to be really good for that kind of last stage of production. Like, all right, now we actually have to make the thing and put it on screen.
Mm-hmm.
While the designers and the writers focused a little bit more on what's the plan and what's the gameplay going to be and what's the story going to be and all that stuff. And during that period, I was mostly in charge of the design and the writing guys, and then the directors really reported to one.
Is there a bit of a split between those 2 teams then?
No, not really. Those people they got to be pretty buddy while you're making making the games sing. It's like the basically the designer, the writer, and the director are the people who are going to be there till the bitter end, each with a different opinion about how things should be.
Right.
And all of those opinions are really important, actually, because you got to speak to intent and just kind of tone and narrative. The writers would be all about, and the directors, like I said, would be all about presentation.
Sure.
And if you fall down on any of those things, then your game's not that good.
Sure. So I'm curious, with all your time at Telltale, are there things that you think Telltale didn't get enough credit for, kind of like shining moments that you really loved that didn't really get out there as much as you expected them to?
Wow. I have no idea. You get a lot of credit now. Yeah, I don't know. It's Telltale did a lot of cool stuff. We kind of broke ground on digital distribution and the episodic model. Like other people had tried both of those things before to know if kind of the timing became right at a certain date, which was right around 2005.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and really kind of revolutionized story gaming in general. But I think we do get a lot of credit for that.
Yeah,
people seem to recognize that. So maybe not. Maybe that's. Those are the kind of the main accomplishments there, I think.
So within Telltale, do you see a bit of a divide, like a BC and AD divide between Walking Dead and then pre-Walking Dead?
Yeah, certainly a little bit. And there's kind of a little bit of a transition in the Jurassic Park game if you play that one, which was sort of it certainly had its problems, but you can see the efforts there to take more control over the pacing of things, and make a little bit more of a reactive kind of game, which is actually a lot of other kinds of games are more like that. They kind of throw you into a level and stuff comes at you and you gotta deal with it.
Right.
So that was kind of a little bit of a transition between that and Walking Dead, but they're definitely the way you approach the games now is quite different, I think, from the kind of story plus puzzles thing, and now it's sort of story plus role play.
Right.
I think.
And so, as the adventure game expert in the studio, the old timer, if I may call you that respectfully, were you kind of bummed out to see the decline of puzzles throughout the years at Telltale? Were there kind of like divides and camps of people championing puzzles?
No, not at all. I always felt like puzzles were a great way to structure the narrative if you wanted to give the player kind of free reign over where to go and what to interact with. That's sort of how you control what happens in any way. But I was never particularly attached to the idea of having to solve them. They are a little too hard, and they kind of get in the way of your enjoyment. And so having something that's sort of a little more moving all the time, without so much kind of walking in dead space, is great in my opinion.
Sure.
I had an interesting experience. There's an old college buddy of mine who he and I have periodically over the years gotten together and designed real life experiences for people. So like the first one was he was proposing to his fiance, and we made this whole little adventure where she was at a business meeting and a FedEx package comes for her, and there's like some instructions and a pair of shoes and phone in there. And it's like, you have to walk to this place. And we had sort of populated all of downtown San Francisco with kind of friends of hers playing roles, and it was just this little adventure for her to go on, kind of a participatory narrative thing.
Were her friends trying to like act like they weren't playing a role, like play it straight the entire time?
Yeah, they were just pretending to be other people.
Okay.
Yeah, which was, it was great. So he did one of these things for me as a surprise for my birthday with actually one of the Telltale designers, and it was kind of more puzzly, and they had like codes for me to break, and it was just like they caught me in the morning. I wasn't feeling that good to start with, and it was hot, and I had to bike all over town, like back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and solve all these really difficult puzzles. And it was just kind of an excruciating experience in terms of kind of the mileage covered and how difficult all the puzzles was. And the whole time I was thinking, man, every adventure game designer in the world should have to do this so that they understand what they're putting the players through.
You had to saw off your own arm at a certain point. Yeah, it's really rough.
So a little, I think a a little more sort of participatory narrative and a little less frustrating puzzly stuff and walking around is a good thing.
Yeah,
That's funny. That reminds me. There's like actually like adventure races, like the Tough Mudder, that have you like physically running all over the place,
Right.
like obstacle courses, and you have to go get the clue and then run back and fiddle with the thing that you need to use to solve it. And maybe that would be a good crash course.
or
as
like
well.
the real life puzzle rooms. I think they're pretty popular out there in San
I was
Francisco.
going to bring
and
that. On the other hand, I did one of those recently. It was really fun.
Did
Yeah.
you win?
But they are kind of designed for you to be able to, hopefully get out of them in like an hour.
Right.
So it's like the puzzles are hard, but you kind of group attack them.
Sure.
And, we escaped the room. I'm
Okay.
pleased to see it took about 50 minutes. We got out.
Congratulations.
Awesome.
Team behind you is still trapped in there, actually.
Yeah.
It's real rough territory. So do you think there's a danger in going too far that way? Like, I think recently I've been playing like the Game of Thrones series from Telltale and stuff like that, and it's like, man, I've maybe controlled my character twice this episode, and then I begin to wonder, maybe I just wouldn't even notice. If I just never controlled my character, how much would I really care? It's like they're dangling by a thread to that last grasp of like direct player control, and it's like, do you think they still need that?
Do you just mean about walking around?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, just kind of connection of your feet to the ground.
Exactly,
And you're in
yeah.
charge of that. Yeah. I don't. Yeah, it's interesting because that does give you a certain, a definite, a grounding of this is my world and I inhabit it and I control myself walking around in it. But I certainly think you can make a narrative without doing that. That's
Sure.
still compelling and interesting. And actually, just the thing that I'm doing now is I'm working on audio games with a studio called Reactive. So there's no control of the character's feet in those because you can't see anything. It's all audio and you control it with your voice. So it's basically just asking you to kind of make decisions as you go and tell it what to do, and then it follows.
So it almost harkens back to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy text adventure days.
Yeah, except the sort of frustrating wide open possibility space of you can just say anything you want, but only 3 things will work.
Right.
Is not a factor in these. We narrow it down to kind of here are your options, and we're actually kind of blue sky working on some more free speech. We're doing some natural language processing so that you can just kind of tell it what you want in your own words.
Right.
But still the moment is small enough that there aren't that many things that you could mean. So it just kind of tries to figure out.
How
what were you saying?
How are you handling like the voice recognition angle of that? Is there like open source voice recognition software?
There is, and we started there and
Okay.
built our own thing around that. It lives on board your phone and works really fast, and it's pretty cool.
For the uninitiated like me, is this sort of similar to like when you encounter a super impressive customer service voice recognition thing, but like on a different level?
Yeah. If those were any good, yeah.
Okay, all right.
If you had
Like
fun
that, 'cause
talking to them.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about that, and the first thing I thought of is road trips. You can play a game if you're driving on a road trip with this, right?
You could, as long as as long as you're paying attention to the driving. Maybe you need one of these Google self-driving cars.
There we
Actually,
go.
it'd be the perfect thing. But yes, it occurs to us that if people are doing that, we should be thinking about. Well, actually, no matter what they're doing, because we did a little research and we put a little pilot project out, and people tend not to be doing it while they're driving a car, actually. But what they are doing is biking or walking the dog or cooking dinner. Like they are doing other things while they do this, which makes sense. It's kind of in place of when you might listen to an audiobook or a podcast or something like that. This is like that's when you would play an audio game.
Sure.
So we have to kind of design it for a distracted audience. It has to be okay for you to miss stuff, and we'll kind of fill you in, or we'll wait if the decision is important, or it really just has to be okay for you to kind of disengage while trucks are going by you or things are boiling over on the stove or something.
Is it going to get to the ultimate point, like when you're playing a good game that's great for a podcast, that you're also playing one of these types of games, and it's like an interactive audiobook, but you're
Also playing another game at the same
also
time.
playing like Grand Theft Auto?
Ooh, great way to double dip.
It sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, I suppose I wouldn't put past people to try that.
Yeah.
Those monsters.
So did the idea of audio gaming lure you away from Telltale, or were you decided you're ready for the next chapter and then this popped up?
It was mostly it's just kind of time to go. I've been there 9 years, which is a long
Right.
time, and we'd kind of built the studio, and it was time for I think a conscious uncoupling.
Yeah. Did you notice the
to
studio?
take its turn.
Did it change quite a bit? I'd imagine after the Walking Dead explosion.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's changed very gradually. The studio was kind of in growth mode that whole time, so it's actually really big now, and a little less, just a little less comfortable for me. I think personally, I tend to like small studios. I sort of joined LucasArts when it was tiny, and I left 5 years later when it was starting to get big. And kind of the same thing with Telltale. And I feel like they didn't really need me so much anymore, and I had just had a son, so like. Now I'm trying to do things that fit around that. So I'm actually Reactive is an entirely distributed studio. The CEO is in Boston, and I'm here on the West Coast.
Okay.
And we use Skype all the time. So that means I can work from home, and if the kid needs lunch, I can go out and feed him lunch, and this is no problem. So it's kind of a lifestyle thing, actually.
Do you think you'd be interested in designing more games for kids then? Because you have done a little bit of that in your history, right?
I have done a little bit of that. I was surprised how much I liked it, actually, because that was something I stumbled into by accident. I stumble into a lot of things by accident, actually. My whole career path is pretty much accidental, including that first job. I just was answering an ad. It sounded fun, but I didn't I wasn't specifically like I'm going to break into computer games or something. But what happened with the kids' games was I had decided it was time to go. From LucasArts, I wanted to focus a little more on kind of writing and design and pre-production stuff, and less on kind of that directing a thing for a year thing. And Ron Gilbert was up in Seattle, and he was making some kid stuff. And actually, the first thing that we did together was we designed a couple of games for adults that never got made. They were adventure games. Bobo and Fletcher, I think, was the title of them. There were two of them, and then he called me up one day and he said, we're working on this kids game, and we want it to be kind of weird. It's called Pajama Sam, and it's this kid thinks he's a comic book hero, and he dresses up with a little cape and stuff. And because we want it to be weird, I thought of you. Would you come and write it? And I wasn't doing anything else at the time. I had no particular desire to do kids games, so I was like, that sounds fun. And I did it, and it was a lot of fun. I was really surprised because just there was charm there that I had not expected, and the idea that we would provide fun for the parents who were theoretically there watching over the kid's shoulder as they would play was really fun for me, and just the challenge of putting all that in there in such a way that the kids wouldn't notice that they were missing anything, or making it funny in a different way for the kids was just all really great. And then the production team at Humongous was really good, and they would take these sort of scripts that I had written, and they would make these amazing games out of them, and they'd come out, and I would be like, oh, that's terrific, that's really fun. So I did a couple more with them, and that just I just got known for doing that for a while. So because other people had gone from that company and went to work at Fisher Price, so I was working with Fisher Price for a little while, and we were making these books that you touch and they tell stories. And
Okay,
I did work with Disney and Lego, and I just got known as this guy who makes children's games, which started to feel a little pigeonholey after a while. But I really enjoyed it the whole time I was doing it. We got to 2005, and a couple of friends of mine were starting Telltale, and I was like, that sounds good. I'm ready to stop working freelance, for one thing. I was looking forward to having a regular paycheck and an office to go to and people to see all the time. But the other thing was they're making story games for grown-ups, and nobody else is really doing that with any regularity. So I was like, this is the kind of stuff I want to work on all the time. I'll just go work with them.
Right. Get these kids out of here. Yeah. So jumping back to Telltale a little bit, do you want to talk about just the challenges of working with a licensed product? Because you worked on Back to the Future and Jurassic Park during that era, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. We licensed everything. Sam & Max was licensed.
That's true. Yeah.
Homestar Runner.
That's right.
It was just part of the whole business model. Is let's get a license so we don't have to worry quite so much about finding the audience and
right,
marketing to them, that kind of thing.
But you're reunited with Spielberg, I guess.
There's kind of good and bad. There's obvious business advantages to it, but just from a strictly kind of design and writing standpoint, it's like you're in a box, but that's maybe a good thing because it also gives you a head start. Like you've got some material to work with from the get-go. You don't have to worry about like, oh, let's find out who these characters are, and it's just kind of who they are. Or at least you can just do the research and play the other games or watch the TV show or whatever it is. You kind of learn their voices and their mindsets. So it tends to be kind of a question of doing the research and finding the magic of that property and then trying to recreate it around the story that's already been told. So that's the other hard part, is like, where do you fit into the canon? Because we always wanted to be able to at least pretend that we were part of canon, whether other people thought that we were or not. In our own minds, we definitely wanted to be in there. We didn't want to violate anything.
It's especially tough with Back to the Future, where you're trying to fit into that canon, which is just a tangled web of time travel.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, let's add one more layer of craziness onto that somehow.
I was always confused about where that Back to the Future game fit in, because it's like, okay, I don't think you guys ever acknowledged the train at the end of 3, but I think it takes place after 3, right?
I think we did talk about the train at the end of 3, but I remember that being a real sticking point. It was something about the version of the car that had been left somewhere else for a while gets taken to our story and then brought back later, I think is how we decided that it worked. But yeah, the train, that was a big deal.
Were you involved in those?
There's no train left by the time you get to our story.
Right. Okay.
So I think from Marty's perspective, it's a little bit later. It's like 6 months or a year, I think, or after the last movie, because he's getting ready to go off to school and school and the band, and these are the kind of life decisions that he's trying to decide to make, and then he winds up back when
were you involved?
Doug was making those same kinds of decisions,
right. Were you involved in like the early story design concepts for the Back to the Future game? And is Bob Gale his name?
Bob Gale, yeah,
and he worked with us. Was he a writer on the original Back to the Future films? Is that what it was?
He was. Yes, I think he and Robert Zemeckis basically wrote and produced them together. Gale was terrific, actually, because he had a lot of decent ideas, and he really would just tell you what he thought. He wasn't worried about hurting anybody's feelings, and I really appreciated that. Actually, he was a good custodian of the license, shall we say. And we always would look for those too. Like if you're at all worried about your own fanboyism, what you do is you find the biggest fanboys around you that you can, and you put them in the room, and you tell them what you're trying to do, right? And there definitely were some of those at Telltale who had been about 12 when Back to the Future came out, and they were the ones who felt the strongest about everything and had the most concrete ideas about it. Marty would never do that, and Doc would never do this. And what if it was something more like this? Those guys are valuable. You gotta find them when you're working on a license.
Definitely. I remember episode 3 of the Back to the Future game being awesome. It's like the crazy Doc Brown is like this Orwellian figure in Hill Valley, and it's all because like he fooled around with the one lady back in the day, and it changed his life forever. Am I remembering that correctly?
I think that's how it was. Yeah,
okay.
Kind of led him astray in some way.
Right. Can we talk a little bit about the Jurassic Park game?
Sure.
I'm a big Jurassic Park fan. Do you want to just talk about those early discussions about where you wanted to place the game, how it would tie in with the movie, stuff like that?
Wow. Okay. Let's just dial back the Wayback Machine to that one. I'm trying to remember. It was Joe Penny was doing most of the story work on that one. And, there again, it was sort of, okay, we have an established canon that involves one island and another island, and they kind of wrapped things up on the first island, pulled everybody out.
Right.
I'm trying to remember. Did we go to the other island?
No, I think you're still on the. You go back to the first island, because that's where the canister is.
Nedry and all that stuff. Right. So we decided to go back to that one after the events of that movie, because they hadn't done that actually.
Right, kind of like the cleanup crew and whatnot.
Yeah.
It was an interesting one. I feel like you guys got a lot of flack because you did not walk around, and it was less of a traditional adventure game than Back to the Future was. But I always wonder what that Jurassic Park game would have looked like if it would have been designed and released after The Walking Dead kind of mold had been set. where people kind of got more used to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we learned a few things there, so that it might have been a better game if we did it again right now. It might,
What are your
better.
frustrations with the Jurassic Park project?
Wow. That was our first dabble into let's do this reactive play and use kind of QuickTime events for everything. And I felt like that was kind of a hit and miss for us. We hadn't really figured out how to tune those yet. And there was a lot of I just felt like we hadn't quite hit the mark on it. You know, we weren't working the choices in quite the same way as we did later to kind of make each moment be compelling on its own. There is some terrific stuff in there though that's really unusual. Here's a thing you mentioned, like stuff we get no notice for.
Sure.
There's a scene in one of those episodes, is towards the end, I think, between Jerry, who's the hero guy, and the doctor, whose name I forget, and she's the one who's been kind of feeding the lysine to the dinosaurs on the sly and kind of undermining you. And they have a conversation walking down the hallway that's kind of morality and philosophy around what she's been doing. And you play both sides of the conversation as you go down. You play him for a second, and then it switches over, and you make some choices as her, and then it switches back, and you make some choices as him, which is insane. You just like if you just told somebody, oh yeah, this is what we're going to do, they would say, you never make that work because the ego investment is all wrong, and you can't play both sides of it. But it actually, because the handoff is so deft between the moment, it's like what would happen if you were just kind of sitting in a room internally going back and forth. Well, there's this, but there's also that, and there's this, but there's also that, and it feels like that.
Right.
Only you're two different people, which I just think is genius. Kudos to John Drake for writing that and actually making it work. That was
John Drake from Sony?
No, sorry,
okay.
Different John Drake.
Different John Drake
entirely.
entirely.
Too. Yeah.
Okay, that's very confusing.
John Drake from Telltale is different from John Drake from Sony.
Gotcha. So with the Walking Dead kind of template, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, that Telltale kind of has now, do you think a lot of that came from Jake Rodkin and Sean Vanneman, who were the kind of leads on that project?
Oh, yeah.
Or was it like, can you just talk about how that kind of grew out of the studio?
Yeah, absolutely. I have to give them the lion's share of the credit for kind of developing that mode. And it was mainly just because they had been workshopping this story for a while, and we're really focusing on kind of what's the story and what's going to be fun about this moment. And they were thinking about all this dialogue stuff and why that was going to be fun. And the rest of the gameplay, nobody had quite figured out yet. It was kind of, and they had wanted to do something that was maybe first person, but that was kind of problematic for Telltale because you lose a lot of the kind of the good tools that we had at the studio if you try and do something like that. They're actually making that now, though. Firewatch is probably the game that they wanted to make then, which is why I'm going to go and play it. And then it just kind of came to be the moment of truth where it's like we have this fabulous role-playing experience, but it has not much other gameplay in it. And then other people got involved, and Kevin Bruner came up with just some good kind of hooky ideas about how to make that work. If it's really going to be about choice, then let's put those little notifications in that let you know that the characters are remembering things, because like now you might not need those anymore, but at the time that was a new thing, and people were not going to understand, like, oh, what's this game, what's the point?
But
These
the
guys
weird
are remembering stuff, and it's going to come back to bite you later.
Right.
Oh, okay. So you had to kind of hit people over the head with that and remind them.
Yeah.
And things like the stat screens and stuff that kind of lend a little weight and meaning to all of the little choices that you're making along the way that really give it the gravity that it needs.
Yeah. What's weird with the notifications was back with like Walking Dead and maybe even Wolf, I forget, you could turn off the notifications on your screen. And now in Telltale games, you don't have that option anymore. They removed that option. And it's always going to be on that screen because I like to just play it subtly. But they removed that ability, which always seemed really odd to me.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Sure.
I don't feel like I need the reminders anymore. But
Right. But Dave, I'm curious, you're a very smart guy. What still fascinates you about game design? Or what do you what do you lie awake at night thinking about in terms of game design? What haven't you quite cracked?
Oh man, there's lots that I haven't cracked actually. Game design's always got new challenges. Like I've made a career out of trying to figure out how to merge game design with fiction, right? It's kind of different kinds of narrative, and how do you involve the player in them and make that a compelling thing. And a thing that's drifted into my field of view recently from some other friends is the idea of making nonfiction texts into games.
Yeah.
And so I have been spending a few cycles trying to figure out how that works. Just kind of classic texts of sort of personal development and like business writings, these kinds of things. Nobody's really doing this. Nobody's making games out of that stuff, and games are great for learning things, right? Because
right.
you repeat and you practice and you drill just because you're playing a game, and you sort of establish habits doing that. And so the idea of using them to establish actual good, like productive habits is kind of a cool thing.
It's interesting you'd go, when you said nonfiction, I thought you were going more of a documentary route or like a biographical, which I think is also really underdeveloped in the game space. But it's interesting you go for business texts. Yeah. Some would argue the most boring version of that.
Well, there you go. See?
That's like you're laying out his job in front of him.
I did a serious game one time that was about recovery of audio cognition in older people. And so there was a bunch of science behind it, neuroscience, about what length the reinforcement loops should be, and what are the phonemes that you need to use that they have to recognize and take action on to get the right chemicals flowing in the brain to actually build back up the neurons that have decayed away. And it's all super, super dry stuff. And my job was to make it fun. Right?
Sure.
So it was just kind of, come in and maybe dress it up with a little funsy story and think of ways to make the play more fun, So it's a thing you're always doing as a game designer, is sort of finding the fun in things that might not otherwise be fun.
Right. So you're talking about, in some ways people would see that as just being gamification, of business development and business practices. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, except that's become an ugly word because people use it to just mean I'm going to take these reward systems that from games that work well, like achievements and leveling up and that kind of stuff, and I'm just going to apply them directly to whatever boring activity I already had. Whereas really what it should mean is you change the activity to be something that is play rather than something that is not play. And I think most people who use the word gamification miss that and just make stuff that's not fun or engaging or anything.
Yeah. So with this new passion, is this part of Reactive Studios, do you think, or is this a side project?
No, there's a side project going on with that one.
Cool.
Yep. Yeah, and the Reactive thing is also, it's fascinating to work in a space where it's all audio because you're sort of so directed. There's all these production advantages about stuff you don't have to worry about, and there's some creative advantages too, because you don't have to worry about can we draw that, can we produce that and make it look good on screen. You just have to describe it well enough, so it becomes a writing problem. It's a really writing heavy medium, and so we're making these kind of audio drama things that happen to be interactive, and that's actually quite cool as well.
Cool. Which one would you recommend people check out?
Well, they can check out the stuff from Reactive. The other thing doesn't exist yet.
Right.
We have one thing on the market which is called Codename Cygnus, which is clunky. You'll see. It's kind of a first stab at stuff. I recommend the Holiday Special episode. This is a spy drama.
Okay.
And the Holiday Special is the one that I designed and wrote. Comes kind of at the end of the season. The Holiday Special episode, by the way, is free, at least on I think on iOS.
Oh, cool.
And this is all of the spies get together around holiday time. They rent a space and they play this game, which is basically Last Man Standing, where they're loaded to the gills with knockout drops and blowgun darts and this kind of stuff, and they're just trying to be the last one awake, and then whoever's the last one gets a prize. And so you kind of stumble into that at the beginning of this episode. So it's good fun.
So
Interesting.
So is that one completely? Is it more like? Is it less like watching, an entire movie of Mission Impossible and missing the middle, or is it more serialized like the TV show? So you can kind of jump in wherever. It'll be richer if you've been with it since the beginning, but you can kind of hop in wherever.
The rest of the season is serialized, yeah.
Okay.
So it's good to start at the beginning and kind of play through.
Okay.
And then the holiday drop was just kind of that wasn't even in the original plan. It was just an extra thing that we
Okay.
decided to do for the fans.
I
just
love
to
that
kinda-
idea.
It was partly just so I could get some experience using the tools and kind of figure out how everything worked. And
Cool.
I feel like every
good fun.
game series needs a holiday special. Just like after you're done, get like the Office or the Star Wars style holiday special, just this weird one-off DLC fun party time.
Yeah.
It's true, yeah.
It works out
Great.
well. So, can you say anything about the Day of the Tentacle remake that's going on over at Double Fine now? Are you being consulted with that?
I've spoken to Tim recently, but I can't actually say anything. You just call Tim.
Okay, I would love to call
That's a
Tim
good
at
idea.
some point.
Really good idea.
Yeah, I take it you and him and Ron are still on good terms.
Yeah. We see each other
Cool.
now and then. I had lunch with Ron actually quite recently. He decided to move back to Seattle again, so I had to catch him quick before he did.
Sure. Who's the greater mind, Tim Schafer or Ron Gilbert? And this is just between us.
The greater mind.
The greatest mind.
Bold question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
They're both pretty sharp. I guess if you stacked them up against each other, Ron's a little sharper and Tim's a little funnier.
Okay. All right.
I'll go that way.
That's a real good
That's
answer.
a fair assessment.
Cool. We're just about out of time. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Dave, or anything else that we didn't touch on?
I want to make a plea for everyone in the world to start using International Color Time to
What is-
schedule their meetings.
Please explain
This is-
International
this is,
Color Time.
You can Google it, but the basic idea is we're all, me especially, forever trying to schedule phone calls and Skypes and stuff with people in different time zones.
Right.
And you always do this dance of like, all right, well, let's meet at 11 o'clock. Is that 11 o'clock your time? Is it 11 o'clock my time? Whose clock are we using?
Right.
Okay, well, okay, yours. Okay, how many hours apart are we? Is it 2 hours or 3 hours? And are you on daylight savings time yet? Or has it started? Or is it somewhere there? No, you're in Australia. It's not. Okay. And it just gets crazy. And so what you need is a system where you just have one clock and it's the same time everywhere on the planet all at once. And
Sure.
you can just say, let's meet at 3, and everybody knows what you mean. So you could use Greenwich Mean Time for that.
Right.
But that's also confusing because now there's just a third number in the mix, which is also a number, and if the clock rolls over at some weird hour of the day for most people when you don't want it to be rolling over from 12 to 1 again.
Uh-huh.
So my thought was, let's just use colors which have a kind of a natural cycle, and which don't have kind of predisposition for people to like, oh well, it definitely should be orange at some specific time of the day. So that now I can say, let's talk at orange, and that might be morning for you and evening for me, but we both know instantly what it means, and there's no confusion, right?
At least once
So,
you
I
figure
made
it
an
out.
Android app to support this.
Oh,
and,
really?
I got a website. It's part of my personal one. And
How long has this been a crusade of
Check it
yours?
out. This has been a crusade of mine for maybe 3 or 4 years. The daylight
Okay.
savings time thing has been for a lot longer. I've been a vocal opponent of daylight saving for many years.
One,
Yeah.
one more time.
A crackpot, some might say.
What's the name of it? One more time.
It is called International Color Time.
All right.
Perfect. Also my favorite.
Google
fun
that, and
band.
you should find the website. Be right
Cool.
there.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for taking the color time to speak with us today.
Yeah, thank
we
you.
really appreciate it.
Cheers.
You've done some fantastic work in the past, and we look forward to following you into the future here.
Thanks.
Cool.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And thank you so much for watching or listening to the Game Informer Show. Be sure to send feedback to podcast@gameinformer.com. And we'll see you next week. Bye.